Okay, let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right.
Just in case somebody of those folks in the city.
Okay. All right. You want to come up and sit here? You can. All right. This is a special meeting of the Board of Directors to discuss compliance issues and policy with respect to the declaration of restrictions and the guidelines of Ocean Pines, okay? And last spring, an ad hoc committee was formed with two directors. Marty, were you one of them, the original ones?
I think so.
And Ray Unger, former director, to look at the policy and procedures and to discuss issues and resolve problems, okay? And where this thing led was to the drafting of a resolution that has we've got in a draft form right now. The people in this committee were Jim Trummel from Bylaws and Resolutions Committee, Advisory Committee, Carrie Nelson from Public Works, Director of Public Works, Jim Kerner, CPI Inspector from Public Works, Bernie McGovern, the Chair of the ARC, Ray Unger. When he left, Pete Gumsack, Director, was appointed, and I think that was it, wasn't it?
And of course yourself.
Marty Clark.
Yeah, and then when I took over as a president, I appointed myself as president because I want to wrap this thing up and I want to get it done, okay?
Right.
As the chair. So what I've done here, I just want to show you what you've got. You've got a copy on your desk of draft resolution M-01. Now, it's not my intention to guide us through using this, but this is the end result we're going to get. Yes, Marty?
Good question. While I was in the men's room, I've got another copy.
It's the same one. It's the same one, Marty. It should be, the one I sent by email had the date on the upper right-hand corner.
Draft resolution.
It's the same one, okay? It is the same one, okay?
Okay.
Now,
Bill, I'm just saying. Bill explained in his email, he wanted to avoid the confusion that we had, I think, the last meeting where we had
Every
multiple
meeting.
copies.
Every meeting,
So-
yeah.
So he sent one last time out,
Here it
a
was.
version
Well,
of this.
That's what I've been working on and making
it's
notes
the
on.
same one, it's the same one. That's the one you're going to use, okay?
Throw this one away.
Yeah. Okay. The other thing I put in front of you is this form right here, okay? And this is the principal form. It's called Discussion Topics, DR and Guideline Compliance, Special Board Meeting, October 21st, 2009. This is the form I want to use sort of as a talking, guiding paper to get us through this thing, all right? And another document I've got on your desk is an extract of one of the DRs, right here. Okay, which you might want to refer to. And Pete, you've got something for us. You going to pass it out later, or?
Did Phyllis, did you pass, where's Phyllis?
They're in front of everybody.
Okay.
What is it?
I'm over here.
Yeah, we, one of the,
I don't want to address. I just want.
I just want to comment. One of the members sent, it's an ongoing issue related to her next door neighbor's property, and it's an item that I think needs further discussion, and Bill and I talked about it yesterday. It involves kind of junk vehicles. And she sent to Tom Olson a letter, which I received, was CC'd on and received yesterday. I believe Tom only received it today. Phyllis said, yeah. So I asked Bill if it would be appropriate to make a copy of it to include in the board packets. And he said yes, because it is pertinent and it's going to address the vehicle issue that I think we have to face, which is not really part of the resolution in front of us, but yet it's an issue that we have to address in terms of automobiles.
Right now, we also have Joe Moore here. Joe, glad to see you here today, and he's here to explain any legal implications of what we're talking about today. Okay. Now, this needs to be a very frank discussion. We need to share our concerns, and because when we leave here today, hopefully all of us will be on the same path as far as what we think is important, where the emphasis should be, what our policies are, and we hope that from this we can resolve the controversy that we have so often when cases are brought before the board. That's one of the end results, but it comes because we have not clearly articulated the direction in which we want to go. Okay? So, let's get started. The
Bill,
first thing...
I'm sorry, one question before we get started. This thing you passed out, policy issues.
Yeah.
At the end of the day,
I'm going to go through that.
Will
Bear
that
with
have
me.
an impact or not have an impact on the...
Oh, yes, it will.
Okay.
It might, but it might.
Okay.
Okay. For the benefit of everybody here, and also because I'm concerned about the people, the membership of this association, understanding where we're going. You don't see many people here, but at the same time, I probably have more people talk to me about compliance issues than any other subject in the association. I don't know about the rest of the directors, but I do, okay, about various aspects of this. And I want to make it clear where we're coming from, okay? The guidance and the doctrine and the rules we follow come from the declarations of restrictions. Now, you all know this stuff, but I want to make sure it's clear, okay? And in paragraph 5 of the declarations is where they address the role of the ECC, and in the later declarations, such as Colonial Village and The Point, and those places, they call it the ARC. So we call it the ARC. Some people object to that term because they say the DRs don't authorize it, but it's doing business as, and it's certainly appropriate. Is it not, Mr. Moore? Okay, certainly appropriate. So they're interchangeable, all right? Now, in paragraph 8 of the DRs, in the later ones, it's not always paragraph 8. I think in the Point it's paragraph 9. But in most of the DRs, in paragraph 8, lists approximately 21. The lead-in paragraph says prohibitions and requirements, and this is an extract. This extract right here, which I passed out, is a list of those kind of things. And this is where the legal basis of our enforcement comes from. Is that right, Joe?
That's correct.
Okay. And in addition to that, because there became a need to further refine and define some of what these things mean, okay, the ECC or ARC came up with a book of guidelines. That's this right here. And this guidelines provides more detailed and in many cases additional rules or quote guidelines of how we operate. Now, where does it authorize these guidelines in the DRs? In paragraph 5, it says that the members of the DRs, the members of the association, need to conform to the policies and rules and regulations of the committee. In the later DRs, it also adds the term guidelines. But in this part of the DRs, just a minute, Marty, in this part of the DRs, that's where the power, as I see it, comes for the ECC/ARC to develop the guidelines, and there have been reviewed and approved by the board, and they are enforceable along with any other regulations the association deems appropriate, as long as those regulations are filed with the county clerk at the courthouse down in Snowville.
In addition, Mr. President, in the original turnover agreement between Boise Cascade and Ocean Pines Association, Inc., the specific authority to regulate by guidelines was provided there in the turnover agreement.
Thank you. So what I'm trying to do is just make sure we all understand that these are enforceable as long as they're reviewed and then sent down and put on file
And one more comment I will make. The Eastern Shore Builders Association, and it must have been 20 years
I
ago,
remember.
attempted to test the authority, well, not attempted, filed suit
Yeah.
to test the authority of Ocean Pines to regulate by guidelines. And Judge Bloxham in the Circuit Court for Worcester County ruled that Ocean Pines does have that specific authority as well.
Okay, so we've established what these two governing documents are. Marty, you had something?
You were reading from the DRs.
Yeah.
The authority for the guidelines. Could you just point me to paragraph, chapter,
Yeah,
verse?
yeah.
And I know it's in some of the new ones.
All right,
but that's about
here's one that, for section 14D,
That's, okay.
and I think it's the first one where the guidelines were actually done, but it says, and it's hard for me to read, specifications or details,
Chapter and verse.
paragraph 5, subparagraph E, talks about the policies and/or guidance or guidelines of the committee.
So that's not,
If
that's not
written
in the majority.
as written from time to time and available for review by lot owners.
Marty, is your question the authority to do so?
We'll get to that. I haven't just asked, what I asked was, where was it in the DRs?
Okay.
And he's quoted out of one set of DRs,
That's
and
it.
I'm looking at the majority of the DRs when I'm looking at 11. That's 1 through
1 through
11. at
Yeah,
least.
don't have the term guidelines in them.
Yeah, don't even mention it.
Right.
That's A.
You're right.
B, you stated the turnover agreement.
Yes.
Is that, as of this very minute, in the courthouse, in the guidelines that are enforceable?
Probably not.
Okay, so it's not enforceable.
Yes,
So
it
that's-
is.
I think it is.
Yeah,
Wait,
okay,
Marty,
then you can go to
It's
the,
res judicata.
you can go to the trial
Yeah.
that the
It's res
ECC had.
judicata.
And I think that one issue of variances and what it was really about coverage.
Well, but no, what the judge held, the issue was lot coverage.
Okay?
But the legal proposition was you cannot regulate lot coverage separate and apart from that which is regulated by zoning ordinance because you don't have the authority to promulgate the guidelines.
Gotcha.
And the circuit court held specifically that we do have the authority to regulate by guidelines because that was the only provision related to lot coverage. So, not to try and cut you off, but that issue has been determined by the circuit court for Worcester County. Now, we have the same, okay.
We can save a whole lot of time.
Okay.
We could debate this for hours.
No, we don't want to,
If
no,
we
we're not
went
going to
back-
debate it.
If we went back in time, it's simple. Bloxham couldn't find that way because none of those guidelines were with the county clerk, which made them unenforceable. I can't help it that Ayers Jenkins and Gordy blew the case.
Well,
Let's go back. My first question is- my
respectfully,
first
they
question's
didn't
been
blow the
answered.
case. They did a very good job on the case. It
All right.
lasted 3 days.
All right, wait,
And the issue, and we've gone through this as well, the issue of what, if anything, is now in the depository has been resolved.
Yes, it has. Except for the turnover agreements.
Well, but I mean, if the turnover agreement is about 450 pages.
I have them, yeah, I know.
Right, so the circumstance of the guidelines respectfully, in my opinion, is an established issue.
and I concur. Now, the reason I brought this up is because it comes up from time to time, and I want to try to put this particular issue to bed. Marty, is your point that we're not operating in accordance with
No, my
legal?
point was a simple question. You quoted a chapter and verse, and it's not in my book.
As I said in the beginning, the first time the guidelines are mentioned are probably in the 14 thing, but other policies as written are in. And I just wanted to make sure, I wanted
Both of
to,
my questions were answered.
Thank
A,
you.
what you just said is not in the majority of the DRs, and B, the turnover agreement is not in the depository.
I don't
Both
know,
questions are
I
answered.
don't know.
we don't know if it is or not. Okay, let's move on, because I wanted to make sure that we understood what was the basis for law here, okay? Now, what I've done, I want to follow my outline here. I don't want to follow M-01 because M-01 is the result down at the end. I want to talk about the big picture here, okay? And I want to talk about what our policy is, what the board policy is with respect to compliance. So on my outline here, the first thing says is that our policy is that the general manager shall establish a program to identify those properties that are not in compliance with the DRs and the guidelines. It's not the ARC ECC's responsibility, it's management's responsibility. Nowhere in the DRs is the authority granted to the ARC ECC for compliance. They approve variances, they approve structures and submissions and
Building permits.
building permits, plans and stuff, but they have no role in compliance, okay? Now, we're going to put them in the compliance role if we follow what we talked about in this resolution, but that's sort of like a grand jury for us. But anyway, they're not. Now, and the next thing is, on policy, is that the board believes that the emphasis in this program on compliance should focus on those properties whose condition detracts from the property values of those in their surrounding neighborhood. That's the broad policy guidance. Any discussion on that?
And the only thing is, I had I know you said you didn't want to go for one yet, but that is written in there under the policy.
Mm-hmm.
And I did add, presents a health and/or safety hazard. Now, would that not be included in there, or should it be?
Okay.
Because it's not just the focus.
And
I put presents a health or safety risk. And that was right after condition, or distracts from the other property values.
that should be in there. I think it's a good inclusion. What do you think?
I agree.
It would be
It's an alternative.
alternative, not an
Right,
exclusion.
not an
So-
addition.
Correct.
So it's not like if there's a health, if it doesn't pose a health and safety issue, it's and, not,
Correct. That's correct.
So how do I write that? How do we write that?
It would simply include it, and then you would say, as Bob said, or detracts from.
Right. Between condition and detracts is where I put presents a health, safety risk, or distracts, or detracts from.
Right.
Okay, all right, well, so that's good, okay? So that's our emphasis. So the program that the general manager implements, the guidance that goes down to his staff, that should be the focus. I'm going to be very frank here. I often think that in any bureaucratic organization, which is what we are, just like the government, it's easy to focus on things that are easy to check. Okay? It's easy to focus on a percent of coverage. It's easy to focus on licensed vehicles or unlicensed vehicles, but it's more difficult to focus on that house doesn't present a satisfactory appearance to the neighborhood. That's a tough one. And we're going to get into those issues, I think, because we have to do examples in order to focus where we're going, okay?
Would it help any to add in here, and are not in compliance with the DRs, since that's our only authority?
Comment?
I don't think it's necessary.
I don't think it's necessary either.
I don't think it's necessary either.
Asking a
Well, it
question.
says it in, the first sentence says that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It may, but, down here.
No, it
No,
says
the first sentence says
For
it.
the authority is the declaration of DRs, paragraph number 2. We say it.
The issue then, see, what we don't want, let me tell you, you guys are being quiet here. I hope you can start speaking up in a little while, but here's the thing, there are a tremendous number of violations of the DRs in Ocean Pines. Okay? And I've heard it compared to speeding before. You stop a guy for speeding for 63 miles an hour on Route 50 and you get mad about it. Why'd you stop me? Well, you're breaking the law. But should they go after those people, or should they let them pass and go after the guys going 80? What do the policemen normally do on 50 when you head to Salisbury, Joe?
They let me go 63.
I said,
How about 57 and 55? you know?
Even here in
I mean,
Salisbury, they'll let you go 65. From Salisbury North, you can go 70.
yeah, so everybody knows we can get away with. But the thing is we have to give guidance to our policemen as to who, we have to let them know what we want them to focus on. And it shouldn't be us, it should be management. Okay?
Bill, in response to Marty's comment, I think the purpose covers specifically what we're talking about.
Okay.
It specifically says declarations of restrictions and our guidelines. So,
Yeah. All right. Let me go into. I'm going to get input from you all because what are the policy issues that bother us the most? What do we need to correct? What is the resolution we adopt need to have in it to solve some of the policy issues we've been arguing about for the last couple of years?
I think the biggest challenge we've had is what comes before the board, and sometimes in the board's eyes, is not a big issue. And sometimes it is. I think we have a challenge trying to define exactly those conditions detract from the property. We don't do a good job of defining that.
Well,
That's very subjective.
Well, how do we go about defining them?
I don't know how you define something that is that subjective in life. I mean, we've gone to court, we've won court cases, we've come back here to the board to overturn. We've had people come in and complain about a piece of paint missing off a door and come before us to look at, and we say that's not something we want to address. I mean, it reigns the gambit. This is in the eyes of the beholder. It's not necessarily in the eyes of the board, and then we have to be the judge and jury on it. It's a tough decision to make, and we're not going to please everybody.
I'd agree, and I'd also say that I think that even though there may be times when we might want to adjust a decision or enforcement that's actually undertaken, we're better to err on the side of aggressive enforcement rather than to be too relaxed about what we are enforcing.
I would say exactly the opposite. We have to err on the side of the member, not the staff.
It's not a question of staff at all, it's a question of property values.
All right, when these things come to the board, what are the issues we don't resolve, we send back, and I know when we do that, there is great gnashing of teeth and wondering and scratching of heads on the part of Public Works. Right, Kerry?
Yeah.
Well, tell me what your problems are. What have we not provided that would solve these problems?
Go ahead.
That's killing you.
One of the problems that I see so far that started this committee 7 months ago, technically is not resolved, it doesn't resolve itself in M1, was not the process that got us here. The process, as I outlined in that first meeting, is still the process that follows through in this M1. Nothing's basically changed, technical tune-up maybe, but it's still the process of what is put on the table for the board to consider a violation. That was the cog in the wheel. It's still the cog, it's going to be the cog in the wheel until that part gets straightened out. M1001 in itself is only writing down what was and basically is continuing. The finding and the enforcement of violations throughout Ocean Pines, whether it's a little one or a big one. The reason we think that you mentioned before, the little ones, the unregistered car, the this, the that.
Unregistered cars, I'm going to write that down as
Okay.
policy number one, okay?
So the thought that things take longer are the heavy conditions. So when you talk about a house, we have cases that take 6, 8, 10 months, maybe a year to get through the whole system, including going to court 2 or 3 times. And those are the ones that get in our mind, stick in our mind, and there's maybe 5 or 6 of them in the fines. However, we run 700 other violations through the year. What are they? Basically little ones. But in my mind, as an inspector, they're all equal. Whether you have that unregistered car, you have a house covered in mold, it's a violation. Once it's a violation, it goes through the process. Now, and again, I'll repeat, when it's a terrible house, we have some houses that are falling down. We had a house just a month and a half ago, we took 1,650 pounds of trash under court order from the property, okay? That was like that for a year, that it took us to get to
Second
court.
issue, trashy house.
So the issue isn't a violation or the type of violation. The cog in the wheel is when it gets to the board, they say, oh, it doesn't have this piece of information, we're going to table it. We're going to put this whole thing aside. We've got a truck issue for 3 homes that are sitting on the table right now, on the board's table. We've got 11 cases on driveway retainers that they're putting off to this meeting, to this type of meeting, waiting for MO1 to get approved. It has nothing to do with MO1.
Driveway
Either you're going to
retainers,
enforce a
got it.
violation or not, in my opinion. So I'll leave it there.
Okay. Pete?
Yeah, a couple of comments. I observed, even before joining this board, the frustration, as it were, and the tension between the administration and the board. It seems to me, 2 things. Number one, Bill, I think you're trying to provide the guidance from the board to the enforcement. Jim just expressed the attitude, and I think well-meaning, that a violation is a violation. You referred earlier to the analogy to a policeman and the speed zones and speed limits. You cited a 63. Well, how about in a 55 zone, somebody going 56? That also is a violation because the speed limit is 55. But the guidance would be, don't touch anybody within X number of miles over the speed limit of 55. Similarly, guidance, I think, is what, and we don't necessarily need to incorporate it into the resolution MO1, but rather providing supplementally that guidance that allows them to understand what it is we're trying to seek, or what we are seeking here. Number 2, I think the question of priorities, and we heard 2 different views expressed here a moment ago, it seems to me that we ought to err on the side of doing what's, in our judgment, best for the neighbors, not necessarily the property owner who has the alleged violation. It's a question of trying to, yes, it is judgment, it is difficult, I understand that. But for us to back off something because it's tough or because it's judgmental is not the right answer. If we lose taking an issue to court, we lose. At least we've done the best we can to try and protect the property values of the membership. So if we stand in the shoes of the surrounding neighbors and the overall neighborhood, we can make those judgments, and be that as it may, we'll see what happens. Joe?
The comment on that is, I think everybody knows that we have, and I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say a 99% success rate in court.
Yeah.
Judge Eschenberg traditionally hears the Ocean Pines cases. By the way, I want to make something clear. Judge Eschenberg ruled on the Eastern Shore Builders case. Judge Bloxam ruled in the Windsor case, where Bill Windsor tried to consolidate lots and pay half assessment. But we have a tremendously successful trial issue resolution because we can justify by the provisions of the Declaration of Restrictions and or the guidelines that we are entitled to enforce it. So the concern should not be, as long as we have a justification, the concern should not be whether or not we file suit. If there's a violation that in the judgment of the board ought to result in legal recourse, then I commend going ahead with it without a doubt. Because the confidence of the community then is such that they know that we will enforce the matters, including a judicial determination.
I'd back it up even one step and tell you that when Kerry and his team go out and do enforcement procedures on these things, their compliance rate is enormously high. There are very, very few cases that actually get to the court level where people become that entrenched in their positions that you actually have to take them to court to
Okay.
Kerry was in court yesterday.
I'll add that since Tom and myself and Jim have done this with Chris in the last 18 months. I mean, that's why we're here right now, because you guys are seeing things you would normally have saw before they would have. And now we're trying to get it all out. I mean, we've had an enormous successful rate in the last 18 months.
If I may, one more
And
point.
we're getting real close. Well, I mean, we just need to iron out the small details.
What I really like about this policy that I don't think we had really addressed in the past is the fast track issue. A lot of
I'm going to
them-
get to that.
Well, I mean, you're asking what the issues are. In my mind, we've seen a lot come before us, or we've heard a lot, and the person drives off the lot with his truck, or whatever the case may be, and 3 days later, it's back. The fast track issue is a major issue that I think we now have a
Okay.
handle on.
What I'm trying to do, here, if you look at the third page, I'm trying to, in the end, after we talk about these policy things, I want to summarize fast track, how we handle complaints and things like that. But what I'm trying to do still is focus on policy, because what I don't want to do, what I want to stop doing, is stop having management look at the board and say the board is not responding, not supporting us. And you know that happens, Carrie. But at the same time, as one board member who's been involved in this for the last 19 years and been an activist in this role, as you know, right, Bernie? And been involved in working on the guidelines, been involved in attending 21 meetings, involved in helping and all that kind of stuff, I still don't like the focus that we're doing, because it, in many ways, not in all, I'm very satisfied in so many things, but I think our focus is wrong. When I see a property that's a junk property, and it's been a junk property for 3 years, and we finally get on it, I see a problem, okay? Marty?
When we're talking about what the boards, let's talk for a second about the ones we sent to court. And what is a win and what is...
I don't want to get there yet.
This is important, because this is the
All
most
right.
frustrating part to me.
Okay.
And I believe it should be the most frustrating
All
part
right.
to the staff.
When I
We
go to
go
court,
in-
I lose. I don't want to go to court.
We go into court, the judge says you're right, and he issues an injunction. The guy cleans up his lot. He moves the trailer away. The house is as cleaned up as it's going to get. Everybody goes, we won. 6 weeks later, the trailer's back, the trash is back, and we're back to square one.
Can Joe, can we get,
Well,
when we present
that's
this
to
to
me
court,
the
can we
frustrating part.
can we get some kind of a ruling that says if you repeat this, we can...
Well, an injunction is an injunction. We've actually done that. We've filed petitions for contempt.
In the last 6 months, what we have been doing is, on these certain properties you're talking about, we are also asking for a permanent injunction, which signs,
Right.
that says attorney's fees, the whole works, if we have to come back to court.
What we do when we have traditionally not asked for attorney's fees the first time.
Correct.
We have asked for an injunction. When the court grants it, if the injunction is violated, we then don't file a new suit, we file a petition for contempt, and at that point in time, we ask for attorney's fees, and
Two
we've
of them
gotten
yesterday.
attorney's fees.
How long have you been using this process?
6 months.
Okay, so it's relatively new. But my point on that is, we need to communicate better with you all about about the history of these
Right.
people, right?
Right. And an injunction is just that. It doesn't go away. It doesn't say clean up your lot and forget about it. It is a permanent resolution. And therefore, all we have to do is notify the court that someone is violating that court order. And a petition for contempt does that. And I can state to you unequivocally, a judge does not like the idea that his injunctive orders are being violated.
Okay, we need to do that
To add
more.
one thing that we were told specifically in court about a month ago, when it comes to personal property, he would not write us a blank check to go on the property every time the personal property
Okay.
reappears,
To remove
personal property.
And,
All right, well, let me-
and I don't want to segue into something prematurely, but my talking about a fast-track method, I have urged this board, as I have previous boards, that I think you ought to use your self-help remedy in the declaration of restriction.
We are, and that's good advice, we're doing that. Okay, Pete?
Yeah, one other area I've observed, and I've had some conversations with both Kerry and Jim about it, is the frustration on their part that they bring something forward to the board and recommend, quote, legal, send it to legal. And the board has been hesitant to embrace that. And the reason is very simply, and it's solved by, I think, M01, the revised M01, the board previously had the option of saying yes or no to the question of referring to legal. what that meant was, this was the last crack at it. It meant not only maybe a warning letter from the attorney, but also going through to court. In many instances, the board was perfectly willing to authorize legal counsel to jump in and send a letter and make a threat, but unwilling to take it to actual court proceedings. So we've now, I think, made that distinction in the revision here so that the board has a two-chance at legal. Number one, involve legal counsel in the process, but short of authorizing them to go to court and paying the expenses and so forth. So I think that's covered now, and hopefully that should alleviate some of that frustration.
All right, Bernie?
The only thing I want to say is from the Architectural Committee, ARC's point of view, is that we have not felt in a while that we've gotten the support from the board. We work with Jim and Carrie and whatnot. They come to us with violations. We look at them. Sometimes we go out and actually see them. We pass them on with our recommendation. And in the past, many times, it's just disregarded.
Okay.
Do you have any specific examples?
Yeah, I think we can get some right now, okay? I got a whole bunch, in
I'd
my
like to hear from
folder.
Bernie.
Okay.
Well, it's been a while now.
Bernie, would part of that frustration be that you brought it to the board and recommended legal and the board said no?
Yes, absolutely.
See, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
The board was hesitant to authorize proceeding to court action. It wanted to fix up the violation. It wanted to,
well, wait a minute.
but it wanted to fall short.
However, this goes back, I think, to one of the basic questions of what is a violation? Often it's where you sit is how you see the picture. And so you may see it differently than we see it, sitting here as a board, because as Marty mentioned, we're looking out for all the members per se. We may see it somewhat differently. So I would just like, from your perspective, some definitions of what you've seen as being where we do not support you.
We've seen some large trucks parked in driveways. Neighbors are not happy campers. It's come to us, we passed it on to the board, and the board says, well, we don't want to touch that. Well, now we are looking.
It's tabled.
It's not compliant out.
It was tabled because this committee in the last 6 months hadn't done anything.
We have, ARC has tabled some of those things coming to us saying, let's wait and see what's going to happen.
All right, because this is a big policy issue, and I know what you're talking about, Barry. I want to get into specifics on something, okay? Because this is a contentious issue, vehicles.
Bill, can I add one more thing?
Yes, sir.
John, and that is that we look at it from the neighbor's perspective, not just the owner, but also the neighbors, and we also get a little bit more subjective. How would we like that if it's next to us?
Okay, that's fine, Barry.
Okay, now, let me talk about unregistered vehicles. It's been a big issue, and I want to talk about policy on that for a minute. Here's what it says in the DRs. No stripped down, partially wrecked, or junk motor vehicle or sizable part thereof shall be permitted to be parked on any street in the section or subdivision or on any lot. Okay? Now, from that, the committee, a couple years ago, expanded that guidance and added in the guidelines that included any motor vehicle without a registration. So in fact, the rules in effect today that they have to enforce includes unregistered motor vehicles. Okay?
Unregistered or registered but expired.
Improperly currently registered vehicles. It says it right in here.
Yes.
Okay.
Do the guidelines also talk about parked on the street? And how does that differ from parked in the driveway?
TDRs say.
Talk about that later.
Let's talk about it later. Let's talk about it later. We'll talk about it. We won't ignore it. We'll talk about it later. Okay, now, a year or so ago, a campaign was started. A campaign was started by, I don't know who directed it, but the principle was that if you had a vehicle without a current and valid registration, and let's say there's 500 of them parked around Ocean Pines, in the macro sense, if you targeted that, you would in fact solve a big problem. Is that kind of, no?
What kind of vehicle?
A car without a, didn't you all go around and look at trailers and cars?
That was 2 years ago.
2 years ago, okay?
Well, the guidelines as of 2006 was changed to say any vehicle. Any vehicle. It didn't say motor, it was changed to vehicle. If you read that, you will see that it says vehicle.
Okay.
Now, the board...
All vehicles parked or stored on a property.
All
must have a
vehicles
current
parked or
state
stored on the property.
registration.
Okay.
All vehicles.
All vehicles.
Now, that was recently changed, by approximately 8 months to a year ago. The board changed that to put the word motor.
The board changed it?
Yes.
Yes, sir. To put the word motor back in so that trailers were exempt.
Okay,
So we don't do trailers anymore. All the riding trailers out there are sitting.
okay.
We had a nice
And
tool.
I think that, if I'm right, I think that resulted from you guys violating people with boat trailers, basically.
Any
That's what
trailer.
we're talking about.
Boat
Well, I know, but I mean, boat
utility
trailers, I
trailers,
think.
it didn't matter. That was
is
when I came on
is
here.
the hot button issue, people's boat trailers.
Okay.
I remember the comment being made, this is a boating community in
Yeah.
that context.
And also, is it not true, Joe, that state law does not require a current,
Well, you can store,
Registration.
you can store a vehicle and not be in violation of state law as long as you don't drive it on a public road.
Right.
But
Right,
I
so-
hasten to tell you, because Kerry gave me a very good, the Code of Worcester County has an ordinance regarding junk vehicles as well, which is, by the way, applicable to Ocean Pines because we are not an incorporated municipality. So there is an additional tool by which you can utilize enforcement measures. Now,
Okay.
we all know that because we've got an effective group of enforcement people working for Ocean Pines, that traditionally the county enforces elsewhere and relies on us to enforce our own, but it's there.
Okay, well-
And the county law says that you cannot have, if I remember right, a unregistered vehicle on your lot. Am I correct?
That is correct. And
Okay.
it says
Typical to
vehicle,
most
not motor
counties.
vehicle.
Yes.
okay, well,
Which provision we do not have, correct?
At this point in time.
Right.
okay, well, my point here is that the DRs, what we were doing, in my opinion, is we're going after a bureaucratic requirement, and even if the vehicle was a good-looking vehicle, we went and violated it and made it a violation and went after it, even though it didn't have a tag on it.
Could have been a brand-new Mercedes.
Could have been a
but it didn't
brand-new
have a
Mercedes.
Yeah.
Let's be specific here. What provision in the DRs supports a violation of an unregistered vehicle? I'm only talking about whether it's registered or not.
None.
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 Exactly. I agree.
None.
Now, whether anybody knows it or not, there is an existing resolution, 2-85-15, which defines an unregistered vehicle as a nuisance. I don't agree with that, but it defines it as a nuisance, which is...
We're going to cancel that old resolution, which nobody knows what it says.
As far as I know, it's
It's still in effect?
I know. That's what one of the, that's what...
Jimmy goes back to
Okay.
It hasn't been canceled, all right?
But back in 1985, is that what it is? 285?
This one said,
94.
94?
Well, what I'm trying to do is, what is the policy of this board on trashy, stripped-down, partially wrecked junk motor vehicles with or without licenses? We have to tell them what we want them to do.
Well, whether
Right?
or not it's got a license plate on it, valid or expired, or maybe an element.
I just had
of
a
a
copy
junk
made of that.
vehicle, but
That's
it's
legal
not
under
in and
the
of
past
itself a
practice.
violation.
Phil, isn't that what you did? And, isn't that what the guidelines is doing? You said, how are we going to tell the people?
Well, what I'm trying to say, I've heard Kerry mention before, maybe you ought to change the rules if you're not going to, if you're not going to let me enforce the rules, you ought to change the rules, right, Kerry?
Correct.
That's what I'm talking about right now. What is our policy?
And, well, wait a minute, hang on a minute, Bill.
Okay.
Hang on. Right now, you have in effect, whether there's a formal change or not, all motor vehicles on a lot have to be registered, have a valid registration. Now, are we talking about doing away with that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
well, but that's in compliance with the county law. And can we be less restricted than the county, Joe?
Yes.
Can you be less restrictive
The
than...
county requires all cars to be registered on a property, am I correct?
Well, let me read it to you.
please.
Junk vehicle or vessel. Now, this is in the Public Health Article, Section 1-104A, in definitions, and it says junk vehicle or vessel. Any vehicle which is without a current license plate or plates, comma, or any vehicle which is without a valid certificate of number or valid use sticker and is in either a rusted, wrecked, discharged, dismantled, partly dismantled, inoperative, or abandoned condition, is the definition of a junk vehicle.
So and.
Tags don't
and.
count unless
Tags
the
don't-
and is
yeah,
covered.
right.
Tags.
Agreed.
If it's tagged, then it is not a junk vehicle unless the tag is not currently numbered, validly used sticker, and is in a bad condition.
So if
an
it's-
untagged vehicle is a junk vehicle.
Understood.
If you don't have any tags, you've got a junk vehicle.
Right.
If you've got tags which have expired and are not currently registered, it has to be in the additional condition.
Right.
Right. Now, the
However,
closest
if I have a junk vehicle,
Beg pardon?
if I have a junk vehicle with valid license plates on it, it's exempt.
No.
Yes.
If you have
It's
a
exempt from that,
vehicle that is validly registered, it is not under the definition of the county a junk
county.
vehicle.
That's right. And my question was, can we have a lesser standard than what the county has?
When you say lesser, you mean more, a more restrictive?
No,
standard?
less restricted, because
Yes,
what we're saying, if I heard right, is that if we have a nice-looking car
Yeah, without a registration?
without a registration,
Yes,
Can-
you can do either way you want to. You can make your authority more restrictive than the county, as long as you have the basis for it, which Marty and I can debate for another hour. But either with the declaration of restrictions or the guidelines, they can be either more severe than the county law or less.
okay.
Correct.
yeah,
Right.
okay.
It's a judgment call, right?
Right, and
It's
I
what
have-
we want to do.
I have to say to you, Phyllis just dropped me a note saying Chief Murray has worked with the county and has gotten 63 vehicles removed from Ocean Pines by virtue of the county ordinance. So he's, that's another
Wanna pass those
enforcement
out?
tool.
You want to now?
Well, just as, I'm going to solve, I want to provide guidance, policy guidance on vehicles, whether it's going to be in writing or whether it's going to be our intent.
I think
We got to solve this problem for these
the real
guys.
Bill, here is some photographs of a vehicle that under the requirement that it only have registration is perfectly okay.
And I saw that. That's that Volkswagen bus?
Yeah.
And I told Thomas Olson, and I will say in public, this vehicle reminds me of Justice John Paul Stevens when he said, "I can't define pornography, but I know it when I see it."
Exactly.
That's
However
exactly
you
it.
define a junk vehicle, I know one when I see one.
Exactly.
Everybody got one?
Okay.
The next door neighbor, Patricia Sloop, that's the author of the letter that I passed out earlier. And this came to ARC at its previous meeting, and they recommended that action be taken on this. The letter has gone to the owner, and it is currently in process, and it should come forward to us perhaps at the next board meeting. But the issue here is, and Kerry knows this has been around, this vehicle has not moved in approximately 9 years. And I think there was a view expressed that this is okay because they have a registration for it. And I believe Tom Olson has, the mother of the owner has actually been into Tom's office, as I understand it, and provided copies of registration to indicate that it's currently. So in the minds of the owner of this, as long as they have registration, Ocean Pines can't do anything, in their minds.
If this vehicle...
I know it when I see it.
And if this vehicle got on a public road in the state of Maryland, they would be arrested.
Absolutely.
Well, okay.
So here's the issue of whether or not registration should mean anything or not. And that's the guidance that I think Kerry and his folks need.
However, Pete, last week, we tabled one, I believe, that was a very good-looking
Very good looking car.
car that was unregistered. So I think in fairness, you need to put both side by side so we understand the differences that we are clearly talking about.
That's exactly what we're talking
John,
about.
that's a very good point.
Yeah.
Side by side, you would see,
Yes, because I
this
was
one
going to
is
vote.
okay and the other one was not okay. The other
But
one's
they're doing their job
trying to do a job, yeah.
in bringing it to our
Trying, I say
attention.
doing.
No, I did say that. You are doing your job by bringing it to our attention.
I just follow the rules.
Let's remember that
We need to change the
the
rules.
red car last week was also inoperable.
You can't tell that. I couldn't tell that. But
Was it offensive to the
Was it
neighborhood?
offensive to the neighbors?
Was it offensive to the neighborhood?
So is that partially right?
As Marty
Was it a-
Clark pointed out, that car was the same thing that he and I both drive, a Sebring convertible.
And the significance of that is? when it comes to the...
Was it offensive?
They have poor taste in convertibles, that's the significance.
Okay.
The significance is this, Jim.
The significance
That if
is
that car is offensive to the neighbors,
All right,
then
guys.
his is and mine are too. That's all.
Not one would call it junk.
That's right.
Exactly.
And I agree with you.
Not one.
would
All right,
say that
hey,
needs
we're
to
getting
be
out of hand here.
of age.
Joe,
Marty,
Joe,
I know
hold on,
Lexi
hold on.
applies to that as well.
Hold
That's not a
on.
problem.
Joe?
Apropos, and everybody needs to keep this in mind, and I have said this in the past, when I was asked whether I believed that a certain condition on the lot was, quote, a nuisance, I have advised the board in the past, and I don't think it's come up with since you all have been on it, I have advised the board in the past that there are two kinds of nuisances under the law of Maryland. There's a public nuisance, which you all should be concerned with. And there's also a private nuisance, which would be a nuisance that was related only to the use and enjoyment of the next door neighbor's property, for instance. I don't think, a barking dog, I don't think that you all ought to get involved in a barking dog, because that is a nuisance not with relation to the community, but it is a nuisance to the neighbor. The same way would be with regard to a motor vehicle. There is no prohibition, and in fact, there is a specific authority in the Declaration of Restrictions for a member of the association to file suit. Can't file suit against the board for not enforcing restrictions. That's prohibited in the Declaration of Restrictions. But I, as a property owner and a member of Ocean Pines, can file suit against my next door neighbor and allege a violation of the Declaration of Restrictions. So the idea of the board maintaining a policy, if you can reach one, with respect to vehicles does not, people can't yell at you for saying you're ignoring my problem, because you can tell them that they can adjudicate their own problem.
And to add to that, Miss Patricia Sloop, I have discussed that with her more than one time in my office.
Right.
That she has legal action on her own if she didn't like what I was doing enforcing the rules.
Absolutely so.
And the van has definitely gotten worse.
Right.
But I agree with everything you've said, and that's enlightening. On the other hand, something like this is beyond the neighbor, because it's the neighborhood and reflective of the entire community.
My
Reflection
point,
only.
Pete, was the opposite.
I know.
When you and Marty were talking
Yeah.
about that car. That
Okay.
neighbor, if that's offensive to
Oh,
that
yeah,
neighbor.
Marty and I are totally in agreement that this is a problem, the other one is not a problem.
Okay, but here's what I'm trying to get to here, okay? When this meeting is over, I want management to understand what this board wants them to do with policy related to this issue. It's an issue.
Right.
You know, and you're saying a rule's a rule, I want to follow it. What I'm saying is, what I think I'm saying is, what the board might be saying is that there are this many problems out there. We want you to focus on those whose condition detracts from the property values of those in their surrounding neighborhood. And what I'm saying is that if in Turns Landing, you may know about this vehicle, it was a Lexus in good shape that was sitting right at the edge of the road, away from the thing, and it was for 8 months. It had a flat left tire and was unused and could not be driven, but it was licensed. And the people that complained next door after about 3 or 4 months, you all said you can't do anything about it. Well, maybe you couldn't. Maybe it wasn't that bad, okay? But what I'm saying is that it bothered the neighborhood. I would personally like you to forget about the Sebring convertible without a license. Get this one with a license and go more after the trashy homes.
Let me add to that, Bill. What if the neighbor beside that house had made the complaint about that Sebring?
That's the dilemma you...
Now, do I have to listen to the neighbor? What I ask you, I send them to you, you guys vote complied out or send it to court. We don't, either way, we want it off the list.
Okay.
That's where the trouble starts.
Okay, I would like to say this. I would like to say this as just one board member respond to you that.
Right.
We don't know if the neighbor's complaining. We don't know if it was picked up on a bureaucratic sweep of the area trying to get every single one without a
I
license.
truly don't like that word, Bill.
Well, you don't have to like it, but I think we do a lot of that. I get
We're
calls.
trying to clean the neighborhood up.
What Bill is saying is, in this particular instance, we don't know whether it was the adjoining neighbor complaining or not.
I understand that.
I think what Kerry is saying here is,
Does it matter?
It does matter.
It
matters.
Somebody pick up the phone and say, I'm sorry, neighbor, it doesn't meet the test of number H in our declaration of restrictions. If you have a problem with that, hire a lawyer. Complaint solved.
I don't know how solved that is, because I can see the letter coming to a member of the board or
That's what's gonna
members of the board, and it's, why didn't you do that?
Because it doesn't meet the test of
He's got to
H.
do whatever.
Yeah, Marty, the H is what there? What is junk
Go
vehicles?
straight down, parts
Okay,
director, junk motor
All right.
vehicle.
Carrie, in your mind, does that convertible, that Sebring convertible, the red one, is that on there because it doesn't have a current registration or because it's stripped down
Or
junk?
because there's a neighbor nagging you every 5 days.
It could be both.
Wait a minute, I'm sorry, in your view, is that a junk vehicle?
Some of the red one?
Yes.
No,
Okay. In your view, CPI,
it's.
is that offensive to the neighborhood?
No.
Okay.
Can it be driven on the streets? I mean, we get to that same argument.
That's not our issue. I think that's what we're saying.
That's not our issue, that's a
We
police
want to
issue.
know, we want to take action on those that are offensive to the neighbors, right?
They need to change the guidelines.
Well, that's what we're here.
That's what we're here to talk about.
Now, just
That's
keep
where your
in, just
policy
keep in
goes.
mind, though,
Yeah.
that there's a continuum here. If that car, as Jim had indicated in his report to you, said that the car is not capable of being inspected.
He told
It
us.
is-
It wouldn't pass inspection.
Okay, so what's going to happen? The car will
It's
sit
only gonna
there.
get worse.
It'll be stored on the property until
Until
it
it
becomes
becomes junk,
an unsightly
then we
vehicle.
can go ahead and enforce it.
And what you're asking them to do is make a judgment call as to at what point does that become junk?
Exactly.
Make judgment calls every minute of every day. If you drive to Willow and look at that wrecked van, you drive through the shadows of a house that may be the worst property in Ocean Pond, and there's not one action against it today.
By the way, that Sebring would be a junk vehicle under the definition of Worcester County Code.
Yeah.
Yes, but we're not here to enforce Worcester County,
I
correct?
understand.
Okay, and we have no obligation, Joe, to enforce Worcester County?
My obligation is to improve property. or to-
Yeah, the obligation, the answer, Pete, is yes, under certain circumstances, you're.
In this circumstance, do we have the obligation to enforce county?
As to, no, because
Right,
your
right.
definition, as I'm
Right,
getting
right,
it,
right.
right now you do, because the definition is
Right.
Sebring.
But we have power over our own
Trying to
definitions.
solve this-
Right.
this- Okay, we haven't solved the problem, have we?
No.
No.
Right. What kind of guidance do you want from the board?
To say that Sebring is
So one
okay.
guidance, right now, you have 1100.2 B or C, okay? And it says, unregistered vehicles are a violation of our guidelines. That's what it says. Now, take another one on Abbyshire, where you refused a while back an unregistered orange Volkswagen, if you recall, and today, there's 2 unregistered vehicles on the property, which again, either came to or will come to the board, because it's 2 unregistered vehicles. Now, what do you think about that one?
Would they meet the test of the junk vehicle stripped
Well,
down?
one's there for 2 years because it was refused, and the other one is relatively new there, about 2 months.
And in the court yesterday, we've got an injunction to tow one on offshore that was in contempt.
That's correct.
Correct. So, I mean, for us to make, I mean, it looks all right, but the judge didn't even, I mean, he enforces the rule.
How long has that been sitting there, Jim?
Okay.
That
Year or two.
predates me.
Predates us.
I'm here almost 2.5 years, and it predates me.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
It seems to me,
I don't think they
All
ever,
right, all right, Pete, Les?
as long, it seems obvious to me, as long as this is so subjective, everybody's got a different opinion of what a vehicle is, what a violation is. You will never reach a consensus, and we might as well pack up and leave. Unless you go by the strict rule, 51 miles an hour is a violation of the 50-mile-an-hour. Unless you do that, we're going to be doing this forever.
Well,
or you vote on each one of them, and
well, you know, what we're trying to do is resolve the problem we've been facing every single meeting, right?
that's right.
We don't get the liberty of voting on the DRs. That has to be changed by a majority of each section.
No, I'm talking about the car.
Yeah, he's talking
Well,
about.
each violation,
Each violation that comes to you, you can say it's not a violation.
Well, and Marty, again, I don't want to quibble with you.
Sure you do.
No, well, but it is fun.
All right.
The provisions of the Declaration of Restrictions does give the association board of directors the authority to not enforce.
Correct.
Okay? And if you choose not to enforce, it goes further and says that no property owner or member of the association could sue you for it. So you do have that, ability to determine. And I will tell you, and Judge Eschenberg has been trying these cases, and he represented Marvin Steen before he got on the bench, so he knows Ocean Pines from its inception. And Judge Eschenberg's guiding factor is if what you all are asking him to do is reasonable and authorized by your authorizing documents, he will enforce it. Reasonableness.
And that should be our standard here at the board level, too.
It should be.
And it should be the ARC standard when they're reviewing it.
Yeah, it should be.
Okay, let me move on, because these tie
How do we
together.
resolve the question on the table, though, with respect to the vehicles? Because we haven't given any guidance yet, maybe we're going to.
We have our guidance, so let them change it. We have a guidance. We have DRs and we have the guidelines. That's what we're enforcing so far. We've been doing it for years.
Okay, so what he's saying very clearly is they're going to continue to enforce lack of registrations unless we take specific action.
They're going to do whatever Tom Olson's going to tell them to do.
Well, but I would rather let them be as consistent as they need to be so that they aren't being subjective about.
When you got the Sebring, you guys say the Sebring doesn't cause any trouble, you vote, it's complied out, we put it in the folder, the neighbor calls, I say.
But the board be the
The board
subjective.
took care of it?
And
It's not
let us
offensive?
Be independent and enforce.
I mean, it's fair.
Yeah, and we've already done that, yeah. But how do we prevent, if we can, the Sebrings from even coming to the board and wasting your
That's what
time
we're-
and our time? That's
I'll
the
tell you
answer.
what I'm finding is, and that's what I mentioned before, if those guys go out and do 100 violations, you will get 98 of those complied out because good people in this community understand that they have regulations that they abide by. You get very few.
All right.
You get very few.
Tom, let me read the first paragraph of the policy. The general manager shall establish a program to identify those properties that are not in compliance with the DRs and guidelines. Your job is to give them guidance as to what to do. We have talked about the role of the ARC. The ARC gets them before you get them, and they look at it, and they make a judgment call for reasonableness and everything else, and you say, let's send it up. It goes to Tom. When it comes to us, you need to say, gentlemen, I've looked at this, and I know all the factors, and I'm going to support them, and we're going to get that Sebring out of there. Or you're going to say, Kerry, Jim, I think this Sebring is not that big a deal. It doesn't have to come to us. What I'm saying. I want you to filter that before it gets to us.
But I'm telling you that I believe in those rules and regulations that they're following. Those rules and regulations they're following
He
is that
would
it's
bring the
registered.
Sebring in front of us.
I think he has to.
No, he doesn't.
Well, Tom feels he has, am I right? You say, Tom
He
feels,
has to obey the rules.
let Tom say, Tom, what I'm reading into your comments or like that, is that you are reluctant to intervene in that case and say, don't bring it to the board.
I'm telling, yeah, you're right,
Right.
because I believe that every vehicle in here
Right.
should be roadworthy and registered.
So-
And when you begin to slip, when you begin to erode that standard, you begin to get into that thing that you've got this year, a car that looks acceptable, next year, the top rot's on it, third year, all four tires are flat, and all of a sudden, you've got to establish a
And you've
standard and
got
live to
junk.
it.
Your friendly little
But then the neighbor said, I told you 3 years ago.
What we are, back to the speeding analogy, what Tom is saying is he's going to enforce 55 if 55 is the speed limit. He's not going to authorize 56 or 57 or 58 because where along that spectrum do you,
Because
is that what you're saying?
when it comes to junk vehicles, that's what I'm going to do, because it says that they have to be registered. Okay?
All right.
If I may ask, I don't have any, the way the policy is written, the general manager shall establish a program, but he has to establish a program that's in accordance with the DIs in our,
Correct.
and he cannot arbitrarily say, well, I'm not going to bring this car to our attention.
He certainly can.
Yes, he can. John, whoa. Because here what we've said is
Already in MO1.
they're bringing it because of a lack of registration, and the DRs don't speak to registrations at all.
guidelines.
As a matter
The
of
brand-new
fact,
Mercedes without a registration is not a violation.
Okay,
Of the
but
guidelines.
however,
as a
they
matter of
mentioned,
fact,
It is
John,
the
look,
guidelines.
the last set
We're
of
gonna change those
guidelines
guidelines.
didn't mention it. So we
have to change the
10
guidelines.
years ago, and you happen to have a car parked in your driveway that's a new Mercedes with expired tag, it ain't in your guideline.
Jim is saying it is,
It
because
is not.
all three of these gentlemen are saying
Section
it is.
1000
All right.
didn't exist in the 89 guidelines.
Bill, they're all saying it is,
It wasn't
and
even
they're
there.
driven by that.
You
We
just
have
said
to
a
change it.
brand-new Mercedes on a driveway without a registration violates section 1100 of the guidelines.
Yes, what if I bought here before that guideline was printed? The guideline before it didn't have a section 1100.
are you saying they're grandfathered?
I'm saying, of course they are.
No, no.
Are we
Oh,
gonna-
wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute.
Okay, then we're gonna go back then and start enforcing driveway borders?
We're going to get that in a minute.
Yeah, that's
What-
another
what is
issue,
it?
but you are not grandfathered, again, Marty, respectfully, you're not grandfathered to a violation of a private covenant of restrictions, whether or not it is established before or after you. When the restriction is established, you must comply with it, unless it is something like the size of a home,
Right.
which is ridiculous because you can't comply with it without a substantial.
Right.
But a registered or unregistered vehicle,
Okay.
you have to.
Well, and here's something that's ambiguous, okay? What is a guideline? Is a guideline something you can use judgment on, or is a guideline a hard and fast rule?
Get Webster's out, and I think it'll...
No, I want to, how do you interpret the guidelines? Are they hard and fast rules?
It has to be observed as a rule.
No, I think it's a rule.
An absolute rule?
Don't start using the title guideline as controlling for how you approach enforcing the guidelines. The term guideline is irrelevant.
Well,
It's a
it,
rule, and it comes to the attention of the people who must act on violations, then they have to follow.
And
All right.
There's a distinction, Bill, between your, meaning the Board of Directors' obligation under the guidelines, which you have promulgated, and staff's obligation to follow the letter of the guidelines that you all have established. For them, it is not a guideline, it is a mandate. For you, it is a guideline which you can.
okay,
We have
well, on this
flexibility.
registered vehicle issue, either we change the guideline and say that you can use your discretion or whatever, just like somebody tells the policeman, some official tells a policeman not to stop people, don't they?
56.
They don't make their own decision.
Well, I was coming through Easton and the cop stopped me for speeding. He said, "Why are you in a hurry?" I said, "Because it's my birthday and I want to get home." And he said, "Well, happy birthday, go ahead."
Exactly. So, but the point I'm trying to make is that exceptions and can be made. And if you say you can't make them, and Tom, if you say you can't make them, you're going to pass it up to us and pass the ball up to us to say, nope, we're not going to support you.
Let me be clear. I'm not saying that I can't make them. I believe that we should be very consistent in what we do. And we're making enormous efforts to be consistent, even when it's not a popular thing to do.
Okay.
It's not popular.
So,
You're going to fall back into a serious trough
It
here
is.
from yesteryear, when there were claims of favoritism and whatnot through inspectors and ARC and, the staff ARC from years ago and stuff like that. We've been trying so hard not to allow one neighbor pit against us against the next door neighbor.
And you have a noble cause in here, because what you're really, really trying to do here is trying to maintain people's property values throughout the entire community without regard to subjective assessments of what doesn't quite
I didn't think
meet
that was
the
staff-
pain threshold.
all right, let me,
To
okay.
decide, I thought that was the board's position to decide the final issue, do the job,
Well, in other words, we as a board need to make whatever changes necessary so that they can act and feel they know what we're trying to achieve, right?
Exactly.
Make the rule.
And if, I don't think there's a single person in this room that could take a look at the picture of this and say, and then contrast that with the picture that Marty has of the red Sebring convertible, and draw any other conclusion, this is not acceptable and that is okay.
Yeah, but.
And yet,
But this has been.
applying this
They've been
criteria that you're applying,
Under notice of
it's the
violation.
complete reverse.
You're on the notice of violation for two different issues. One is a junk vehicle,
Yes.
and why not, the other is just an unregistered vehicle.
Right.
We're not saying technically that the red one is a junk vehicle in the sense, other than 1100
You're going by the guidance which says
we're-
lack of
All right.
registration.
Actually,
signifies-
Right, so we're already making a...
We need to change
We're
that.
already making a decision there.
We need to change that.
I get it, Pete, this is not acceptable. It's against the rules. It's more pleasing to the eye, is all it is.
Because this one here.
Which
this one
rule
here,
is it against?
9 years ago.
The Sebring.
Tags.
Tag.
Think about it.
No, but if we eliminate the tag requirement as a condition of enforcement, then we've solved it.
Well, kind of. If you, how about this one here? 9 years ago, it probably didn't look that bad.
I think
And you'll have a
I think you've
proliferation.
exacerbated-
And 9 years, it may have been
With
perfectly.
the Sebring, they'll still be arguing 9 years from it.
But
when
at
it's
some
still
point in
there.
time, it becomes not okay.
All right, here's the
The
issue.
brand new Mercedes today, 15 years from now, could have all,
But you got to compound, you're compounding a problem.
55.
Pete. You're compounding a problem here.
I don't think it's a
One
problem
is,
having the board
as we
make some
found
of
out
these
with the boat
decisions.
trailers and the
I don't
utility
think
trailers
it's a
and everything
problem having
else.
us make some of these
When we
decisions.
couldn't use the registration as a
we don't support
tool
them.
That's right,
to
that's
remove them
fine.
from the properties, we're now getting a whole proliferation of trailers that we can't get rid of. So the same thing is going to happen with the cars, as I stated before. We have a property that had one. It was denied to remove because of registration. Now we have 2 cars parked there. So Ocean Pines is just going to become a parking lot, a storage.
See, my suggestion to the Sebring guy, if you at the rule, you could say, look, fella, how long is it going to be before you have it restored and have a license on it? If he says 6 months, a year, there's ways to go about letting him keep it. I don't say we go tow them all away, but there has to be some end to the means when, how long you can store.
Then you're using your judgment, and you're going to give
But I
them...
can.
Huh?
Well, no, wait.
Not now.
whoa, whoa, see,
You can't?
we want you to be able
We
to.
want you to be able to
that
use your
judgment.
judgment.
Well, you have to change the rule.
No. Wait a second. Just to make things clear. People, we send a notice of violation, or the second letter, and they call up and say, look, my mother just died, and I'm going to be away for a couple of weeks taking care of somebody's kids or whatever. I need a month's extension to change those windows that I took out, put new windows in the house. So we give them an extension, let's say for 30 days. Now, I kind of disagree with Kerry a little bit in saying that, just give them 6 months or a year to fix a car, because the car shouldn't be there. But,
All right.
so I just want to get across the point that we do use some judgment in giving...
When it comes to the board, we have to know that kind of thing to help us make a decision.
That's all in the sheet that you got last month.
Okay,
All those
okay.
extensions were listed.
You need to be able to present to us, which has not been done in the past, a piece of paper doesn't tell me a lot of things. Somebody has to get up there like the defense counsel and say, here's why I want this done or don't want it done, and we can make a reasonable response. Okay, that's all we're asking.
And while it is, and I recognize it's a policy matter, and my purpose is not to interject myself into policy. Tom's point is the policy of either enforcing or not enforcing what is an apparent violation should not be with staff. It should be with you all. Because once they get into it, then everybody is going to say, you're treating me different than you treated my neighbor, and that type of thing. But your point is well taken, Bill. If Kerry says, look, I got an unregistered Sebring that I've got to violate, but he tells me he'll have it restored in 6 months, then you all say, okay.
That's what my point was.
And
For him
then
to make the decision,
all
not
Kerry
me.
does is put it in his file.
No, I don't want it to come to my level. I want him to be able to say, because he knows what the board policy is,
Well,
to tell him.
Well, I see a difference.
I don't want to waste the time of the board on these little things.
I see a difference between him and them. I don't
Okay.
think you ought to make them.
But I just made it clear, no, I just made it
Could you
clear. I
respond
think that the general manager has the knowledge and the authority to say, board, if we ask why this wasn't enforced, I talked to my staff, and here's why I'm delaying this for 6 months. I want you to be able to look at this and be, with the ARC's recommendation stuff, before it gets to us, not to waste our time to argue over a Sebring without a license, yes.
Let me finish before you stop. I want to go to 85 Abbyshire Road, which
Okay.
I believe is the house that had one car and now it has two. Classic case of you give them an inch and they'll take them off. Can anybody tell me whether we've collected any of the back 3 years' worth of assessments on that house? Or are we in foreclosure? You will not clean a pigsty till you take the pigs out. That's why, I mean, I don't believe that we go, oh, he's got an unregistered car in the driveway, while he's inside watching his $120 a month cable television, and we get no dues paid.
Well, that's why I agree with you. When we make a decision at the board level on what action we take, there's more than one action
There's
to
a lot,
consider.
and the point is, it's a turf war. Well, that's not our job.
All right, let me move
Well,
on.
it's not CPI's function to go out and do assessments.
It's their function. When this comes to us, it's the management's function.
That's right, it's not theirs.
It's
Okay.
It's not theirs.
Not theirs.
Not theirs. But when it's presented to us, we need to know a lot. There's matters of extenuation and mitigation is
I
what
mean, when
we
you're
used to
worried
call
about a
it.
red
You know what I
Volkswagen
mean?
in a driveway with a guy hadn't paid
Okay,
his...
let me move on to trashy homes, because they tie into this. Trashy homes. All lots, whether occupied or unoccupied, any improvements placed thereon shall at all times be maintained in such a manner as to prevent their becoming unsightly by reason of unattractive growth on such lot or the accumulation of rubbish and debris thereon. There are one heck of a lot of lots in Ocean Pines that need attention.
And Mr. President, vote by a 2/3 majority to have them clean up that rubbish and trash, and you don't even have to worry about me.
I think, well, we do, because in the case that came up at the last meeting, we looked at it and we saw some trashy bicycles and we saw some
Personal property. And again, I recognize that, and what Judge Eschenberg said is, look, I don't want you guys, taking off personal property, but my point would be, I would say that if, what'd you take out, 1,250
He told us-
pounds or
On
something?
Nottingham, 1,650
He
pounds.
told us specifically, at that time, we couldn't take that personal property through the court order, but he would not grant us a permanent injunction.
But what you did with that property substantially cleaned it up.
Correct.
Yeah, so,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so, see, here's what bothers me. I got to tell you, okay? What bothers me is that these trashy houses, and there are a lot, and the people that I talk to are concerned about this. They aren't concerned about the Sebring, okay? And I would like the board to decide on the guidance given to the manager. Let's focus on these trashy houses. You drive down the street and you can see them, and they're really, you would not want to live next to them, okay?
Some of them are health hazards.
Awful. It took us how long to get rid of the one on Sandy Hook? I didn't want to,
Sandy Hook, technically.
with the big 2 years?
2 years.
Yeah. 2 years. Yeah. And we need to me, we need to communicate better and say, we're going to go after that. Why did it take us so long? That's a rhetorical question.
No, it's not rhetorical.
Okay, why did it take us so long?
It's very technical. In the early stages of that property, on previous administrations here, both up and below, it was put aside. 2.25 years ago, we had 174 cases of old violations that were sitting on a shelf. And actually, we're coming out of it now. We're down to one legal case. Remember?
Yeah.
2 months ago, we had 19 of them. We're down to one.
Okay, well,
So what happens is, what happened in those cases were that it just sat there.
At the board level?
And in the last 2 years, we've cleaned every one of them up.
Sat there, was in a hopper with 274 others in those other
you
ones.
cleaned the cases up.
Every one of them is cleaned up. We have the last
All
one
right.
waiting to go to court next week.
Jim, did those all come to the board, various boards over time? I mean, you had to go through the board
not
process.
over recent time,
Right.
not over the old time.
Let me give you an example who I think is a problem on this, okay? On a house, I think it's on offshore, I'm not sure. We went to court on an unregistered vehicle.
Yes.
Yesterday.
All right.
Yesterday.
This same house, we're now going to go to court on for being a trashy house.
Yes.
That was a
That
failure
stuff was
on all of
added- That stuff was added in the last 2 months.
But it's, you mean the trash is new?
Yes, sir.
That's what he's saying.
Oh, okay.
They're not bicycles that are there, they're exercycles.
All right, I thought,
A washer sitting on the porch, and
Yes.
junk, and a bullet heater sitting on the driveway, and so all this kind of stuff.
And if they
That was a
would've-
new violation.
condition.
The judge, and because the resident wasn't at court yesterday, he couldn't include it, or he would have.
Chris would have included it yesterday if she would have showed up. We were going to interject it to the judge. But
Which
since
we
she
have
wasn't
done-
there,
Which we have done in previous cases. When
Right.
something else new had come up to 13,
Yes.
we added things in the courtroom because the owner was there, and he agreed to get the
Okay.
additional things cleaned up.
okay. I'm concerned about the trashy houses, yet,
Me too.
and I want to address something, because I get these calls from the members. I want to explain, I want to know the rationale. Why have we gone after driveways with that, or they're missing the landscaping ties in the driveway? Retainers. Why are we focusing on that?
Go ahead.
I can give you a reason.
You're not asking me.
We don't. We don't.
I can do that one for you.
because of some letters.
Because
One guy.
Yeah.
Cranking out
He's a
dozens of
member.
letters.
But I
Yes,
would
he
be-
is a member 20 times over. Right.
Yes,
His
sir.
initials are DL.
Did he start that?
Yes, he
Yes,
did.
yes, sir.
I
And that's what I was
would-
going to explain, is that...
We have to answer-
I have never in 2 years gone after a driveway.
Never.
Okay? The driveways are picked up when a house is built. When the final inspection is done on a new house, and the deposit is refunded to the homeowner, everything has, all the regulations have to be met, and one of them is if you have a gravel, sand, shell driveway, whatever, it has to have retainers, and it's enforced. After that, I've never enforced one. However, we did wind up with 28 letters, individual letters, handwritten, written, typed and signed, sent to us on those other ones that you are speaking of, and there's 11 of them outstanding yet. The other 17, people complied, okay? Nicely complied. Now, some of them put in retainers, there were 2 that took out the gravel and put in blacktop, which you do not need retainers then for. So 17 were complied, and we have 11 sitting.
Okay, another case, I forget the street, I mean, it's on section 6 or whatever. Beautifully maintained home, beautifully maintained home, and across the street in a couple of places, there were junk houses, unoccupied, growth and stuff. But people were parking on this person's edge, and they put the little flags to keep them off.
Right.
And they were incensed. Why are they going after me for trying to look at my property? Why are they going after me? I said, well, because it's against the rules.
11, 13.
Well, it's more than that, it's a county right away.
Yeah.
And if someone's riding a bike and happen to hit one of them, then the county, the 1988 agreement, we're,
In many instances, I'm going to say in the vast majority of instances, people are maintaining what looks to be their lawns, which are in the public right of way.
Public
and
thing.
we try not to.
And we want them to maintain it, though, by the
And that's
way.
right.
We like
That's
for
The
them.
grass comes out to the road.
But as Kerry says, if somebody physically intrudes into the public
hurt.
right of way and somebody gets injured because of it, then the liability, the county is
If
saying,
I have your-
you can't let them be.
Thinking the property you're thinking, there were 3 properties, one guy owned 2, one guy owned the third. One of them put out no parking signs, not just
no.
reflectors also.
Well, let me-
It's important, the stipulation.
Let me explain to you my concern, okay? These people call me, okay? I say, okay. I go look, and I say, look, you're breaking the rules. In other words, I said, has anybody talked to you about this? No, I got a violation. Has anybody personally called you and said, and explained to you personally? The answer is no. What I'm saying is that, I think you know what I'm saying, right? We've got to, I know it's tough to go talk to these people and all that kind of stuff, and maybe I've heard people say it's not my job, but it's easier to me than to send them a letter and put them in violation than personal contact, And they say, no one's to talk to me, I have no idea why this is being enforced. I said, it's because you're breaking the rules.
Why didn't they call the letter writer? Why didn't they call the person why are they calling you and not calling the person that sent them the letter?
I don't know.
If people are out, I'm happy to talk to people when they're out. I don't knock on a lot of doors.
Bill, I think what you're referring to is what we've been trying to instill in the staff, and that's more customer-friendly service and more member-friendly service, and picking up a telephone call or being a little more courteous, that's all I think you're saying.
All right.
What are we doing about these 11 driveway borders that are still on our worksheet?
It's on the board. It's on the board's table.
We went as far as we can go with them.
Has it been presented to the board? Have they been?
It's never been presented to the board.
I don't think it's been come to the
One
board.
was.
I never remember.
Yes, sir.
One was.
One was, it was denied, and we were told that they're not going to consider it until after this MO1 is complete.
I don't recall
As
that.
long as with the three-
MO1's not going to address driveway borders.
No, sir, it's not going to address the 3 trucks that were on hold, too.
Or the car tag.
We as a board said hold on these?
No, I
don't
think
recall
they're pulled by,
You pulled them.
I didn't pull them personally. I think they were pulled before I became president. They were pulled.
We were
But
given one.
I mean, they're waiting for your action.
Okay,
Now, we're
so,
going to present the
wait,
3.
let's stop. I think what we're hearing here is that you didn't go out and try and enforce those, you reacted to complaints that you received.
A complaint.
A complaint.
The message that the board's giving you is that they don't believe this is the violation that would be, that we should be pursuing. So I think you resurrect them, present them, recommend to close the file on it, and we're done with that.
Are you talking about the driveway retainers?
Yeah.
That's not the way I recall it, but it sounds good anyway.
I think a lot of what we did on a lot of these,
If it's a departure, that's fine. But that's
The three oversized trucks that we had along before the red one, you recall, they were, I believe they're coming November 18th.
Yes.
They're going to be
You're gonna see them
represented
again.
November 18th. That's our plan. We didn't put in our plan the driveway retainers. If you want them then, we'll give them to you then. You want to wait
I don't
for the
want-
next one, we'll do the next one. You know, do one
we don't
problem
need
at
to
a
see them, or?
time.
I have a question. What requires driveway retainers?
What?
The guidelines.
Driveway?
The guidelines.
What guidelines?
Our
Guidelines.
guidelines.
The construction guidelines for a house.
Aren't there some old houses that never had them to start with?
Yes.
Maybe way back.
Could be, just like the underdeck screening and stuff like that. I mean, there were 4 or 5 years where we didn't have guidelines.
Do we get into,
So there's only a few
do they
houses.
just have to be there, or are we worried about the condition of them? Because I've seen some, I can show you some that are rotten, sticking up,
But
all kind of things.
Except, that, as I explained before, except that for new houses, on the final inspection, we've never enforced that.
Only because.
You're making a judgment call there, aren't you?
I never knew about it.
Well, I'm making a point. You know, if you can forget a guideline rule of driveway
Forget it. I didn't know they were there.
of retainers, to me, rules are rules. You know.
I was taught that.
Bill, what are you talking about
he
with
may
the 3
start
trucks?
enforcing them now, now that he knows it's...
Bill, he suggested there's another matter involving 3 trucks that's been held in abeyance. What's that all about?
What happened on this, Pete, is, as I recall, is that the president said we're not going to rule on those until this committee reports out, which is why I'm pushing this and why we're spending so much darn time on it, because we have to make sure that we wrap it up. Even if we don't wrap it up like you want, you're going to get the sense of what the board wants.
But what is the issue with the 3 trucks?
3 oversized trucks, large trucks. Remember the red
In the
truck?
DR is 1 ton or greater.
Okay. What about taxi cabs?
What about them?
Well, there's one on Ocean Parkway that has a number of taxi cabs all the time.
13, 14.
There's 3 on Ocean Parkway have a bunch of cabs. You talking about South-South?
Yep.
Yeah.
They live there.
They live there.
So you could have 5 or 6 taxi cabs?
What's the difference between a taxi
Okay,
cab
I
and a
just want to know.
sedan?
I just want to
Well,
know.
Joe
Commercial?
Moore could
No.
probably tell us that even vehicles with advertising on them are not allowed in the association. Didn't you say at one time?
You can't park them on the street, obviously.
I don't think I
In the
did.
driveway, it's fine, right?
You can park.
Not a car.
Okay.
Yeah, I
You can't start enforcing that because it's too widespread. The taxi cab issue, there's a bunch of them that are parked on 13, 14 Ocean Parkway. And we've said we can't resolve that issue.
Sometimes there's as many as 6
Not
cars.
unless he's running a taxi cab service out of his home.
It's not.
We've had other violations on that property, and we've gone through the taxi situation with the homeowner, the people that are there are tenants. I've gone through all that. They live there. They drive by.
How many people live in the
Cars
house?
are there at daytime, and that's why you see them all the
How
time.
many people live in the house, you know?
Yes, there's 3 people and a young family. I think
Why do you need
one-
6 taxi?
Maybe a zoning violation.
Excuse me?
Why do you need 6
That's not
taxi
so.
cabs for 3 people?
What?
Why do you need 6 taxi cabs for 3 people
No,
living
the
in the
most you
house?
see is 3 cabs.
Okay.
Okay, it may be a zoning violation.
There's 6
Joe?
drivers.
Not
So 6
unless-
vehicles, I think.
Wait a minute.
The zoning violation would be, as it would be a violation of your restrictions, if the property was being used for something other than single-family residence.
Right.
But the fact that somebody comes home and parks his taxi cab there is not.
Well, but if they have, let's say there's a family living there and they have 3 or 4,
I think 3 people live.
3 other people, I believe, if it's zoned R1 or
Well,
R,
3 of the people drive.
whatever it is.
If they're living as a single-family unit, they do not have to be related by blood or marriage as long as there are less than 7 of them. That's.
Is that county
the
code?
definition of- that's-
7 total people or 7 not in the family? I know, I've read the,
Right, well, I can have, my mother was one of 12, so, I mean, I can have as many kids as I want, but if you're not related by blood or marriage, a single-family unit is defined as someone, less than 7 in number living as a single-family unit. The only case that I ever lost, that I recall, in enforcement
I bet you do
was
recall.
Eleanor Schuster. Now, I mean, I've lost a hell of a lot of cases. I'm talking about in enforcement. Was Eleanor Schuster because we said she had an apartment downstairs and upstairs. And Judge Eschenberg said, why are you picking on an 85-year-old widow? And I said, because she's violating the Declaration of Restrictions. And Eschenberg said, I'm not going to find an 85-year-old widow guilty. But because she had 2 kitchen units.
yeah.
But
Wasn't a single-family
as long
home.
as if there are less than 7 unrelated people living in a single-family, bona fide single-family, with 1 meter and 1 this.
So we're saying that, how many cabs are parked there at night? Or
3.
3?
3 in the daytime, not at night. They work at night. They drive by night. They sleep at daytime. That's why everybody sees the cabs there all day.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Now,
So if
they
you're
also
living,
have some-
so if you're living next door to this house, and you wake up in the morning and you come out and you see these taxi cabs all around, there's nothing we can do about it. Is that correct?
In this particular case, I don't believe there's anything we can do about that case.
Unless they were running a taxi cab business out of that house, and that probably
They're
would be
working for an
home
established
occupation.
Ocean City
Yeah,
taxi cab company, and that's really...
If they're dispatched from there, is that a, no?
I say,
We don't know the answer to that.
We don't know the answer.
But we have, I think we have an
By the way, there
obligation.
are more than 3 from time to time, but that makes sense if they have visitors and, friends who also drive taxi cabs and they come over or something,
Right. Let me move on to the Vinyl Tech porch issue.
Oh, Vinyl Tech porch.
Why do we, this causes a lot of problems.
Bill,
with-
you're referring to one that was brought to us and it was originally part of the board packet for the last meeting. It was the one that was withdrawn because the owner complied out by paying a $105 fee.
Oh, applied for a permit for
Right,
it?
yeah. Remember that one? There were 4 originally on the list, 1 came out,
There.
right? So I think that's what provoked the conversation about Vinyl
I
Tech
heard
porch.
about that. I'm not personally involved in that case.
Okay.
but-
Okay, but, when a member has a screen porch in the back,
Yes, sir.
and it's got screens, and then the member changes that to a Vinyl Tech porch, which is screens, and then the insert windows that are vinyl that are not glass.
There's 3
Why
season rooms.
why do we,
4 season.
why do we do that?
Why do we do what?
Why do we,
Require a permit?
yeah,
It's sort of secondary because the Worcester County requires a permit for structural change.
Maybe so they're not paying.
It's always been established that way. I don't know why the permits were first required for that. But any change, structural change, aesthetic change
Appearance.
in Ocean Pines needs an Ocean Pines permit.
This was a violation that was going to come to the board, except for the fact that the owner came up that day
Yeah, once you
and wrote a check for
they wanted
$105.
to sell the house,
But they were in no, this was the new buyer.
the new buyer.
The new buyer was found to be in violation because a permit had not been obtained for the Vinyl Tech porch that was substituted for the screen porch by the previous owner. So when this party bought the house, they bought it with a Vinyl Tech, And the citation was, there's a violation because there was never a permit issued by Ocean Pines.
That probably was quote on a resale.
Yes, yes, exactly, because the real estate agent was
I
involved.
just want to get that out, it's
So,
resale.
but that provoked the question of, well, why in the devil are we even talking about vinyl, why is that a violation, et cetera, et cetera? And Carrie, you told me the county does have certain requirements, and they view it as, I think you told me, a structure.
Right, it's a structure change.
Structural change.
Structural change. It's a screen porch, perfectly legitimate screen porch. The people decided that they wanted a better, and by the way, I have Vinyltech windows, my builder put them in. But in any event, if you swap out apparently screen porch for Vinyltech, that triggers within the county the need for a permit,
Did
right?
your builder get a permit to put yours in?
I'm sure, I had a quality builder, so,
Did he do it originally?
yes.
Yes.
Yeah, it was part of the original.
Doesn't matter if it's original.
But my question is, why does Ocean Pines now feel the need to piggyback on a county requirement? I guess that's,
Well, because your permit process requires you to do so. The county can approve something, Pete, within Ocean Pines, which would be a violation of your restrictive covenants, and therefore, the only way you could enforce your restrictive covenants would be to have a permit process as well, because the county won't enforce private restrictions as long as they're more restrictive.
okay.
So the reason for the double permit process is to make sure that whatever is done that requires a permit is done in compliance first with the county regulations and in addition with your regulations.
All right, well, I brought this up because I wanted to air it, okay? A little history here. When the Vinyltech porches first came in, they weren't required to have permits or anything, okay, by the county or anybody else. What happened is, it maybe Marty will recall, the county about, in 1995 or so, started asking for 4 copies of plans instead of 3. And the 4th one went over to the tax people. So they would have on file their stuff. And that's at the same time as that, as I recall, is when they started saying, hey, this is more than a screen porch, and we can get a higher tax thing.
Structural.
So that really is, which just makes sense, you know. So some of these may be grandfathered, I don't know, okay? But we often, a lot of people change the Vinyltech porches, and what we do is we go after the member. To me, there's 2 companies that install Vinyltech porches in this area. I think somebody ought to call them and say, if you don't start getting the proper permits, you 2 people, we're going to not let you, we're going to stop approving any of your, in other words, here's a problem, let's solve it, because the poor member signs the contract and pays, what, $5,000, $7,000 for this change, and they
We
don't,
don't never remember seeing one but that one yet. I've not seen a bunch of them.
a bunch of Vinyltech,
They come back without a permit.
really?
We deal with them every day.
I know you do,
The
but
people come in all the time.
there's been house sales lost because of the Vinyltech porches.
Different groups of contractors for different reasons to.
Well, I think we ought to tell them, yeah, Marty?
I believe the problem is, if I may spit it out, that we're doing resale certificates on a house that has a Vinyltech porch on it. It was a screen porch, but the owner changed it to a Vinyltech porch before the regulation.
Could have been.
Could have been.
Then,
Like I say, I'll check. That one you're talking about, I'm not sure. But I'll
And Marty,
check.
continue your thought, and if they did, we ought not to be concerned about it.
absolutely not.
Right.
The county doesn't go after
Right.
a permit.
But we may be.
No, they
Oh,
don't.
yeah, they do.
What?
No,
The county
they do
does.
if you needed the permit in 1958, you didn't.
Oh, no,
go
no.
There
after
was
it.
no Vinyltech in '58.
Thank you.
Okay.
So when did Vinyltech start?
Have we
I have no idea, but it
That's what-
started
I told him I
well
would
before
check
there was
that
any
one.
permits.
That's the only one I think I remember seeing like that.
All right,
Because they
well,
come in all the time for permits.
all right. Do we need to address any other policy issues that we don't respond to you guys on and we don't support? Vehicles?
I mean, that's the trucks and the,
Well, we'll have to take care of them when they come up.
All right.
yeah.
Where do we stand with personal property? You okay now with where we're,
We've always been pretty good on personal. We
No,
don't touch it.
removal.
Nothing changed.
Nothing changed, no changes
No out
required.
of court order.
Okay.
Let me ask a question though, Jim. You mentioned that those were exercise bikes. Was that classified as junk? See, when I looked at that, I saw them as personal property.
It was, but as a group, you talk about the little bit more of a macro situation.
Yeah.
Look at the property, and you'll see that there were 2 exercise bikes there. There were broken tables by the tree.
I didn't see
About
those
15
on
feet
my
from it.
junk.
You didn't see the
Yeah.
post legs and stuff?
No.
Huh.
It'd be the same principles in
And all the
Maytag wash.
Junk on the other side, there was a
Put it in
torpedo
context.
heater laying on the driveway and everything else that was considered
Completely
unsightly.
inoperable. Yeah,
Maintenance,
inoperable.
Debris, you got a lot of categories you
Same
can
with
pull.
the
Okay.
The exercise bikes are not operable. For the
You don't
visual
go and try this
inspection,
stuff.
you wouldn't want to get on them, would you?
I wouldn't touch it.
I was just curious
Yeah.
because you brought it up,
Okay.
because we
Just
also
put it in
had,
context of why you were down there.
we also had another one that came up that same meeting, if you remember. We had 4 cars in the driveway. We had a couple of, I don't want to call space heaters, but the heaters that you find using in the garage, et cetera, that were in between 2 cars, et cetera.
That's it. That's
That's
what
what
you're
we're
talking
talking
about.
Okay, so all that, when you looked at all that there, I mean, we came to the conclusion, or at least I, in my own mind, that that was personal property. And that we just couldn't go in and just, pick up half of it.
There's another good example, is that one on the corner over on, was it? So another was in the same meeting, it had a lot of tarps covered,
Yeah.
junk.
Yes.
I mean, I'm not gonna argue, it was junk. House looked like.
Brookton.
junk.
Brookton, 2
But if
Brookton.
there's stuff in the
Yeah,
yard,
yes, yes.
We went to court on that, didn't we?
It was horrible.
No.
No,
Go ahead.
On this one.
no, again, I think we tabled that, we came with the same thing, going back to Joe on that one there, saying, hey,
Two
this
Brooklyn went to legal.
went to
Yeah,
legal.
no, we
Illegal.
acted on that.
Yeah.
We acted on it.
We acted on both of them to
Yes,
go
we
to,
did.
go to.
We said that we thought it was personal property,
Yes.
went to legal.
Made the right decision.
Okay.
Joe,
I do-
can we be liberal in that interpretation?
Well, again, I think you need to determine, you're talking about using self-help.
I'm talking about using self-help.
Yeah, you need to do that based upon 2 things. Number 1, on a case-by-case basis, but also with respect to having input as to whether or not Judge Eschenberg has determined that in the past. By that I mean, if you've got some kinds of personal property are just junk.
Right.
Okay, they're trash.
Old toys that are broken and, that junk?
And what Eschenberg wants to make sure is that he is not authorizing Ocean Pines to take personal property, which literally is going to be removed and destroyed.
Right.
When they ought not to do so.
All right, there's no question in your mind what we're talking about, right?
question in my
Okay.
mind.
Wait a minute, before you move off, the issue with 2 Brookton was that they had, on their front yard, they had 2 tops covering, we don't know what, because it was underneath.
That was after the fact.
Well,
We tried
okay,
to
but
show
when it
that
came
some-
up,
Some of those tops were a little,
I agree.
not quite covering all, and you could see what's going on there. If you want a little more
We're trying to
story
hide it.
today, it wasn't when it was presented to you, but
My question,
they
Jim,
didn't have
is,
a home occupation permit for the property, which
Okay.
they finally got, and the actual personal property that's sitting out there in the front yard, which they then covered because the landlord got after him, once the victim, in fact, is his business material. He's a landscaper. He's got lawn mowers and wheelbarrows and stuff like this under there.
okay, my point is, going back to some of the comments, Bill, is I would not want to live next to that with 2 different colored tops on, sitting in somebody else's front yard. Now, in my mind, that's a junky house. What are, but the stuff is covered. So can we go after them?
Your
That's the
judgment,
question.
if we bring that to you and you tell us to go get it, we'll go present it to Judge Eschenberg in that
Okay.
way. Chances are he's going to tell you to go remove it.
Okay, that's fine. Just want to make sure.
And if he
Okay.
doesn't, at least we've done our level best to try and get it
Correct.
correct.
All right, I want to move on here, okay? I'm going to turn to page 2, if you would. I would just want to make sure that if the board's policy is clear, all we got to do is review these things for compliance action and vote by 2/3. That's all we got to do, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And the GM, we shouldn't be dealing, the board should not be dealing, we can always talk, but we shouldn't be dealing. You guys need to execute your job working for him, and he's the guy we need to talk about if there's a problem. Okay? And as far as
Same
the
team, you can.
ARC goes, guideline review, Bernie?
Yep.
if you got the guidelines and you see that they need correction and there's a, you need to bring it to our attention.
We make changes periodically and send them up to the board. for
Okay,
approval.
all right. And we would ask that you review these cases as sort of our grand jury and looking out for both sides and asking the hard questions and that, and if you do your job, it makes our job easier.
Right, and at times we will ask CPI to go back and give it one more shot with those people or whatever.
Okay? Good. And moving on to 3, now I want to address the things in the resolution to make sure that we're on track on all this stuff, okay? Fast track actions. We have a policy of letters, and I didn't even want to get into those things because those are really your business, Tom, but when there's a case of gross problem, when there's a case of health, safety, we need to know that you go to Tom comes right to us, and we approve immediate action. Right?
So to be clear then, in order to establish whether or not a violation is a fast-track one, I bring it to the board to...
No, you don't have to, yes, you
I make that...
You make that decision, Tom.
I make the determination as to whether or not it's a fast-track or not.
Yes.
Okay.
And, because it could be controversial, you let us, you keep us informed, but we want you to be able to say, go after
I
it.
suggest changing that first line to say, upon determination that a complaint is to be designated a fast-track violation by the general manager, OPA will notify the owner by certified letter. So that my authority to rule a thing as a fast-track, it's kind of unclear as to who's supposed to...
Bill,
Tom is in
how about
there.
page 2? Page 2, paragraph B, the general manager is designated as the individual under whose authority the compliance program is to be administered. The GM may delegate any or all of the responsibilities herein contained to one or more subordinates. That's the overriding context of this, isn't it?
Right.
Okay.
In other words, just to make it clear,
Under definitions, it's covered.
the boss is responsible, and he can delegate these guys to carry out, to execute anything he wants them to do.
Yeah. I mean, this
But
is a board...
at our level, we go down through him. We don't go down through them.
I retract the question. Under the definition, it makes it specific that it's the GM that makes that determination.
Right.
Good. You're good to go, right?
You good to go?
I'm
Okay,
happy.
good.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. So fast track, any questions on fast track? All right. Complaint.
Well, what page are you on?
I'm not reviewing this, I'm reviewing this.
Okay.
Because
But you're referring to the...
MO1, though. That's what we did.
You gotta have everyone in
Right,
hand.
but I want to make sure our policy is discussed first, and then it's reflected in the resolution,
Because
okay?
there's one other thing I have about fast track
Okay.
that I want to make sure that we cover.
Okay,
It says that if I determine that it's going to be a fast track violation, I'm going to notify the owner by certified mail, which is a good thing. But I'm immediately following up. Upon receiving notification of the violation, the board shall make a determination as to the action to be undertaken. There's always the possibility that someone won't sign for the certified mail, and now I have a delivery problem. So I'd amend that to say first class and certified. If the first class doesn't come back, we make the assumption that it's...
and where does it say you have to do that for fast track?
He's in paragraph 8 on page 4. On page 4.
Okay.
Section 8.
I thought he was on 2.
Well,
I'm on 8 now. I'm on 8.
You're on, wait a minute.
all Tom
Step
wants to
8?
make-
Yeah.
No.
All Tom
Where are
wants
you?
to make sure.
You're on fast track?
Okay, right, procedures for fast track.
Page 4.
Page
All he
4?
wants to make sure is that he is not stymied by someone's refusal to sign
Right.
the return receipt. And what I told him was that the law presumes that if you send someone regular mail and it is not returned, that it has been delivered. So you ought to send it both ways.
Okay.
Because that way somebody doesn't stymie.
And that's that change you,
It's a,
okay.
How about, go back to page 2. Do we need to make the same change there on page 2, number 5, where 5C, formal notification of owner shall be in writing by UPS or USPS.
We made it there.
You made it there, you made
It's right
it
there.
Good there.
yeah, that's okay.
It's got both of them.
Okay.
And shouldn't that
It
be?
says or, not and.
this.
No, I'm saying make the or and,
Yeah.
or just
Jim, are you
and,
tracking these changes?
and or?
There's already two processes that are covered by that.
I got the first one.
Are we okay?
I'm not sure what we're talking about right now.
Otherwise, you'd be sending
Well-
everything by registered mail, that's everywhere.
I thought you were saying send it both ways. not-
That's what he said.
That's fast.
We'll have to get together and make sure we understand exactly what you taking notes on that,
Got it, got it. Withdraw.
Tom? Can you make sure Jim gets that in the resolution? Okay.
Okay, if, we appear to be discussing both M01 and A, am I correct?
Well, we're talking about fast tracking in principle, and MO1 is what puts it into procedures to make sure we know what we're doing.
Okay, I have one question on the fast track violations definitions 5B.
Okay?
I have no problems and absolutely concur it poses a health or safety risk. But I'm not sure what else would exhibit an urgent need. That kind is very nebulous in my mind.
Well, it is, but
Yep.
it's a judgment call. It's a
Yep.
judgment call.
You can't define it.
Well, I know.
You
and
see
therein
it when
lies
you
my-
know.
Anybody visited that Harbor Mist property, we got,
many times.
It's like defining
that pretty
reason.
much sums it up.
To me, it's clear.
It's clear.
Okay,
Foggy over there, clear here.
okay, no,
Reason
okay,
is-
I just want to make sure.
Reason is this. Let's say Mr. Dirty Deeds, let's say Mr. Dirty Deeds with a big fat red truck starts parking it there tomorrow night. That would now be
I
fast
agree.
track.
Okay.
Why? Because we've already sent them about 8 letters.
Exactly.
Visited with them 4 times, sent them to court twice, and everything else. It automatically goes fast track, you get 1 letter.
You got it.
Back to court.
Hold up. No question about that. We've already gone through the court
No, no,
procedures.
that-
But let's go back to Harbor Mist, which I'm glad you brought up, Marty, because to me, that's one that should in fact be fast-tracked.
Should or shouldn't?
Should be.
Okay.
Because that's one,
Which, are we talking about the same one?
Yeah, we're talking about-
The wealth of,
right, it was cleaned up and all that good stuff. I think ultimately they moved
I'm
out.
talking about the one that had the pod.
Yeah, they moved out. Okay.
Yeah,
But that one there,
Junky looking property, but they're going.
but to me, that one should have been a fast-track one way back when,
Absolutely.
as an
And
urgent
I
need.
think
I
it
just,
was, even though it never came to the board officially.
Harbor Mist,
I think that was
15
probably.
of them, not 15 of them.
Yeah.
yeah, 15,
Okay.
yeah.
John, are you satisfied now?
I'm satisfied.
Okay.
Something would have happened there now, it would go to fast track.
Yeah,
All
but
right.
what I'm saying is even, Marty and I are in agreement, I believe, that even before you'd gone through the normal procedures, we could have, or you all could have come to us recommending fast facts procedures on that one, because that one was clearly, yes.
That was
this is-
almost as bad as the footbridge property,
Yeah.
but we haven't done anything with for the last year.
See, as I see fast track, it's not just,
14-foot bridge, got
All
clean.
right, look, let's stay on track here,
I
okay?
took pictures of it 5 days ago. It was
Harbor Mist,
junkyard.
you have a couple little snags that can come to this. If they're renters, they have rights. And to get people evicted and clean the trash up, it's not gonna happen overnight.
okay.
And that's what happened at Harbor Mist. We acted on, went down there with our crew with authorization to clean it up, all right? Couldn't get out rid of him. He had to stay another 45 days, and within that 45 days, he did it again.
Again,
Under Maryland law, I assume.
Well,
yeah.
it's under, I mean, we went through
All
the
right, well-
attorneys, and you have to be given formal notice.
Okay, but I think we understand,
Right.
we agree now what fast track means,
We
okay?
got it.
Let me talk about complaint handling, and I'm bringing this up because the issue here really is, if we want to make it an issue, is that you all, when you get a complaint, you log it in,
Yeah.
okay? You don't reveal the name of the complainer to the violator, do you?
Ever?
No, not ever. As a matter, you don't feel like you have to. So, somebody, Marty,
Let's quick interject one thing. Most times, if it's a phone call or, you know, it's anonymous, so we don't know who it is in the first place.
you go look.
Now, sometimes you go on a property and you can guess who's calling.
Yeah, okay. What I'm saying is that the question was brought up
Sometimes they tell you.
that complaints should be in writing and complaints, and the complainer should go on record, okay? And this board, or our committee, voted that that's not a requirement. If you get a notice that there's a problem, you're going to go check it out, whether the complaint is anonymous or not.
Any message by any method is checked out.
Okay.
And you're raising it because you want to reaffirm.
I want to reaffirm that, that's why.
Okay.
Marty?
I'm still totally opposed to it. I think if a person won't reveal their name and write it down, then the hell with them.
Well, that doesn't mean that there's still not a violation.
Property and the violation doesn't exist.
I agree with you.
Okay, so I just wanted to bring it out, and Marty, you're, as usual, in the minority on that.
And that's okay.
Okay,
Sometimes
all right. Now we're going to talk about a real,
Living proof would be the U.S.
you ready, Joe? Joe? You ready?
6-1
I think
again.
so.
We're going to talk about the inspection by the CPI department inspectors. Okay? And what this says is that, let me read it exactly what it says here. When in the process of evaluating the existence and extent of a violation, CPI inspectors may have the need to enter onto a property, a lot, to determine whether or not there is in fact a violation of the DRs or ARC guidelines. Entering into the lot shall take place only if the existence of the violation cannot otherwise be determined. There should only be one period there.
What page you want?
I'm on page
page
3. Should entering a lot be deemed required for such an evaluation, the examination shall be limited to observation only. Further, upon entering into a lot, the CPI inspector shall first attempt to notify the occupant by knocking on the front door, to notify the occupant of their presence and purpose for being on the lot. Do you all agree with that policy?
The policy?
Yes. You agree with the policy?
In each specific case, not necessarily.
Well, what don't you agree with it?
I know a few cases I would attempt to enforce a violation, but I wouldn't be too happy to go knock on the door. Like getting chased around with a baseball bat or something. So,
But let me,
As a general policy matter,
I
you're
said
okay with it?
policy
Yes.
matter,
There are
yes.
going to be exceptions to everything.
Exceptions?
well, would you, if you're afraid to go knock on the door, would you also enter the property?
If I could,
And
if
not-
I could try and take pictures, I've done it, you know, I mean, I do what I have to do, I do my job. I don't risk I'm not gonna risk my life and limb to do the job, but I get the job done.
But what we're
One way or
saying-
another.
what-
Hey, I can walk 5 feet over and walk on somebody else's property and not have to worry about his property.
Right.
So, as a policy, I say
It's
agree.
okay.
You want me to be truthful and say in specific cases? Perhaps not. That's all.
Okay, however, it does says shall first attempt to notify the occupant by knocking on the door. It doesn't say may, it says shall first attempt. So if we're afraid to knock on the door, where does our police department enter into this? And if I'm nervous of going knocking on the door, I should have the policeman outside with me. Because it says shall first attempt notify. That's knocking on the door. Either we take that out and say may,
Shall attempt.
yeah. I mean, shall attempt means I knock on the door.
Where's the police? I told them already.
If we have a policy that this is what we want done,
Let's be clear. Jim, if you had a person that you knew was a hostile person, okay, and there was something in the backyard that you couldn't see from the road, you have two options. You can go knock on the door, or you may walk down the easement on the other property, on the property next door, and
Take care of it.
take a picture from there.
That's what I
Do what you have to do.
I just tried to explain
So-
that.
Yeah.
Or if you
So
had the name of the person that complained.
You're
they
not
obviously could see it.
necessarily, you don't necessarily need to enter onto that person's property to find the violation that you're looking for.
No one is suggesting that he risk life or
No.
limb to
No.
go on there.
No.
It's a general policy.
I mean, the next step would be.
Let's move on.
Let's move on.
yeah, hold on, but just a minute, Marty. But at the same time, you're going to walk on the neighbor's property and walk all the way down to look at the backyard, and let's say the neighbor's wife is out there in the backyard in a bikini that's reading a book and stuff. He looks up and there's an inspector.
Or worse yet, you stumble over the guy's marijuana crop, we have him arrested and he's thrown out of court for illegal search and
Well-
seizure.
Wait a minute, I do this job because I have fun doing the job. And if that's part of the fun.
You know what I'm saying? You got to. Okay. Marty.
Wait a minute, Bill.
No, he said, let's move on. He's
No, but it doesn't, you know, I understand where Jim is coming from on this here, but if I'm entering onto the other person's property to see the
knock on the door.
violence, I gotta knock on the door.
Knock on the
Yeah.
door.
You gotta knock on the
You
door.
should knock on
You
the
have
door
to have
because you thought there
permission.
was a hostile
We
environment
try
there.
to do everything we
Ought
can.
to have.
I think the policy is pretty doggone clear what we want you to do, okay?
I said I have no
All
problem.
right.
This committee, or advisory task force, has already 6-1 me on it, but for the record, although an inspection of the property may be necessary in order to determine whether or not there's a violation of the DRs. Necessary does not equate to lawful. I said that before, I say it again. I think when we enter onto properties, we're trespassing, unless, as allowed for in our documents, which are very clear, unless, and by the way, ECC, CPI, ARC has no right to enter a property in this book. The board of directors of the association shall have the right, through its agents and employees, to enter upon said lot, to restore the lot, whatever improvements are. Such right shall not be exercised unless 2/3 of the board of directors have voted in favor of it being exercised.
Right.
They address it right in our DRs. You are not to walk on people's property.
That's, well,
Okay.
Now, there's a legal opinion from Moore that we're licensees.
Let him give his, let him, would you
Can I
please
go
provide
get
us
some
your
coffee?
legal opinion and legal advice on this
Because
issue?
I've got
I
his
have.
opinion.
Would you, well, just so,
I mean, I didn't.
Just for the record
you know,
here,
just,
this-
you want-
some, you know,
Here's the next page.
Yeah,
for the members of the public who
it
are
is-
out there.
It is my opinion, Marty and I, one of these days, when you got, how long, one of these days, we're going to agree on something. But
I'm sure of that.
well, this is
My
an issue
grandson's a
that,
handsome devil.
that I want resolved.
Here's the self-help provision is more stringent than someone tiptoeing on someone's property, okay? The self-help provision that you all vote 2/3, the board of directors used to spend something like $50,000 on a property for Sony Florendo 25 years ago. That's a substantive intrusion onto somebody's property. Walking onto somebody's property for the purpose of observing whether or not that person who has contracted by buying their property to comply with a declaration of restrictions and the covenants in a private community is very different. It is my opinion, respectfully, with Marty's opinion, that it is not a due process issue. First of all, what we do is not state action. You all do not have state authority. So if you find somebody's marijuana plants and take it to Dave, that's not an illegal search and seizure, but that's another issue. The purpose of a reasonable entry upon someone's lot, not peeping in windows and not, intruding in somebody's privacy, but just to determine a violation, it is my opinion that you and your inspectors and your agents and employees are licensees for that limited purpose. And that's as far as we go.
That's your opinion.
That is my legal.
Okay, now, it's true that another person could find another lawyer
And that's fine.
and give another legal opinion,
And I
okay?
am perfectly willing to have that tested in court should that proposition arise.
Right,
We
now,
have great confidence.
Well, and I'm perfectly.
you are our association attorney, and the board of directors, you do not establish what we do. You recommend to us based on your giving us your best legal advice.
That's right.
Okay? And I am asking the board here, for those who accept Mr. Moore's legal advice on this issue, please raise your right hand. For those who don't. All right, we've gone on record now. Just so we know, this is now the board
Is that 6 to
accepted
1?
policy,
6
okay?
to 1 again.
Okay.
5 to 1.
Oh, 5-1.
All right. Due process and member notification of hearings. I think the sense of the board is that, I don't know if this is a legal thing or not, but when the ARC has a meeting to discuss that member's case, we are asking by resolution here that the CPI notify them that we intend to discuss their case.
And that is very appropriate.
Very appropriate. It has not been done in the past, but it's very appropriate, okay? At the same time, when the board hears the case, we are saying that we want the member notified that we intend to hear their case, okay? And that's contained in this. And we think that's proper. Whether it's legally required or not is
No, I
another.
think that's very proper.
Okay. Any more discussion on that? Okay,
And they support that totally, right?
And we will take care
all
of it.
right. Legal action. When we go to legal, it used to be that you all took it all the way to the end, in general.
Basically, when you turn it over to us, we believe that our mandate is to see to it that your determination that this matter be resolved. So what we do, as you know, we have a process of notifying people before we actually file suit. We file suit as a last resort when people have ignored our letters subsequent to ignoring several letters from CPI. But if you instruct us to take limited legal action, meaning write a letter but don't go to court, that's your decision. But traditionally, we have thought that when you turn it over to us, our obligation is to see to it that it's resolved.
Okay, but the sense of the board is, by this resolution and by what we're saying, is that you need to tell us if in your best legal judgment we're making a mistake or that we're fighting a battle we can't win.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Okay?
So you
in other words,
my
we
input.
we want your legal. We don't want to be doing silly things. And if we say we're going to go to legal and you look at it and you say, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense, like the peeling paint off a door,
Right.
you need to come back and say, hey, guys,
Okay.
you need to rethink. We want your best legal advice on the merits of the case.
And do I understand that would be in my judgment? In other words, if I get it and don't have a problem with it, I go with it. If I get it and do have a problem with it, I request that we do.
Generally speaking, yes.
Okay.
When in doubt, come back and talk to us.
That's fair enough.
Yeah, good.
Okay, all right.
That's fair enough.
And reports to the board. We have a format. I don't want to go into it
We
here.
got a copy last.
We got a
Is
copy
that
last
the most
time.
recent one we just got?
Yeah.
That's the best. If we can just stay with it, that's.
All right,
Is that on record?
and this resolution says that
That's all
that's the
opposed to what we-
format, but it can be improved
Yeah.
as needed.
We said it, yeah.
We have some improvements, but...
Yeah.
Please don't throw.
Okay, now,
Bill?
Huh?
Bill, I do have one question. John said he wanted to change shall to may, and no one went one way or the other.
where is that? On what?
And entering the property, knocking on the door.
No, I want to leave it as shall.
I think we've said.
I don't have a problem, I think we solved it.
We solved it.
Did Barney agree with you?
Every policy has an exception, even if it has a shell on it.
Not really. Not by-
Well,
Not by law.
okay, not by law, but you know.
Yeah.
Okay, now what we've done is we've agreed to approve a resolution that implements major policy, procedures. I didn't go into all the letter stuff because that's really your business. We put it in here because there's no other place to put it.
Not changed much, but.
But you can, and we can still, this is just a resolution, we can still change all the time. It takes a little effort to change it, but we can change it. We haven't resolved specifically the issues we discussed and spent so much darn time on at the beginning because they're tough to resolve.
That's for a board issue.
They're judgment questions,
Not this committee.
and we cannot spell them out.
It will never be black and white.
No.
But I think you have the sense of the board, okay? And what needs to be done is a general manager needs to bring it to our attention and say, hey, guys, whatever we're doing. But for you to say that a law is a law and I got to follow it, then you got to go back and enforce all those driveway ties at the same time. You know what I mean? You got to use a judgment call.
That's the speeding ticket at 56 in the 50-mile an hour zone.
You know, if I may back up
Okay.
to C, inspections. Based upon what Joe told us,
What page are we on?
General Procedures 6C, page 3.
Page 3.
60.
Okay.
I question even if some of that is necessary based upon what Joe told us. Entering on a lot shall take place only if the existence of, basically what I heard him say is we have the right to enter onto a lot because of who we are.
Well, we don't want that. We don't want that to happen. We don't want
you don't
inspectors
need to.
roaming around unless there's a
We
reason.
don't go creeping around people's yards.
Understood.
We do go in yards without seeing something from the street when it's a complaint.
Yeah, no, I understand
Investigate
that.
complaints.
But
They
that's
may-
based upon what Joe said, it's not even necessary because you
But
have
we
that
wanted
right.
this. We want to put in here with these words.
Okay, then I would scratch the word only and just say if the
Where?
entering onto a lot shall take place.
Take only out. Have you
Take
got that?
only
Have you
out.
got that, Jim?
give you more
Page
latitude.
3,
Page 3, 6C.
6C,
One line.
fourth line,
Fourth line down.
take only out. All right.
Okay.
Give you more latitude.
Have we got any other discussions or questions about the things we talked about today?
Yeah, one question. We're talking about some minor changes. This refers to in 9, page 4, addendum A. Do we have an addendum A for that?
We don't, we do have an addendum A. Yes, we do.
That's the report.
We should
That's
have
the
that.
report.
They already asked about.
We don't even need, that, to me, that's a bureaucratic thing. It's going to, it says it can continually change. He's got it. You can get it from, yes, we do have one.
You want to put it there? It should be part of that, just as an example.
It will be.
Okay, we'll give it.
Basically what I'm
No,
saying.
that's what he said. He wants it attached, and it should be attached.
It will be attached.
And have a date on it, so as it changes from time to time, we know which
Yep.
date, right? Okay.
Good question.
That's good. It should be there.
It's the sheet that covers, that's the cover.
He knows what it is. He just wants it.
He just wants it attached.
Yeah. That's all.
Who has it right now?
They have.
We have it.
Email it to
We
them.
sent it to the board once.
Yeah. He just wants a copy.
Yeah,
It will be.
It should be.
It will be.
We'll debate this over.
We'll get it to you.
I don't care if I get one. That's the
We agree.
We've all seen it. It's, to me, it's a bureaucratic requirement that can change from time to time, so I'm not
Right, though. It
concerned
needs to
about
be
it.
attached to
It
that.
will be attached.
That's what I'm saying. Let's move on.
We don't talk about it here.
I guess I've become the recorder here again. I would like somebody to send it to me in a email.
Sure. Okay, I'll do that. Would you please get together with Tom and discuss those other little changes we talked about and make sure they're in here?
Okay, well, yeah, the one I don't have is the health and safety or whatever.
I have that written. I'll be happy
Does
to.
Tom have it too?
We'll make sure he
I
does.
know-
Phyllis is the important one.
It exists.
She told us
Okay,
that.
they've got it. So you need to, so what I'd like you to do, Jim, at the next meeting, include that on your presentation of resolutions for the first review? Or can this be the first review?
Yeah,
This is the
board
first
meeting.
review.
This is a board meeting,
This is the first, and then the next one,
so you need a motion to approve it.
at the next one, yeah.
We mean the next one.
At the
At the next
one.
meeting.
Because this is the first reading.
This is
We
just
have
the
two
first
readings.
Yeah.
16, 17 meeting.
Okay. Would you take care of that? Thank you. Have we got any other questions or any
Yes.
other comments about this?
I do.
I
Okay.
have, oh, go ahead.
We referred earlier, regarding the automobile and the registration, there was a citation of some document that exists that most of us seem to be unaware of that provided, I thought you were saying the mandate that those vehicles without current registration needed to be acted upon.
Right here.
It'll be in the guidelines.
And is that something we need to act upon?
Well, I think, we're leaving it as it is right now, and if you as the liaison to the ARC want to consider changing that guideline, you got to get together with Bernie and we'll talk
Okay.
about it, and we can recommend a change.
Pete,
Okay.
Pete, you want me to show you the way out on this one?
Yeah, please.
This is the last four, which covers over a year, of violations under 11.1.C.2, which is the violation for tags. They are 100% have something in common, and it ain't an unregistered
Dues.
car. All 100% of them are delinquent in their dues, and 75% of them are more than 3 years delinquent in their dues. How are you gonna twist the arm on that guy? How are you going to threaten to take him to court when these same DRs we're talking about demand that this board foreclose?
You've got a good point, and we're looking at that.
Okay.
But that's beyond the
But the
scope of
answer
this
is,
meeting.
we can't do anything about this. It's in here, and there's a process that needs to be
Right,
followed.
there's a process.
to get that changed.
All right, do I have any public comments? Yes, Joe?
Here's a shocker.
Joe Reynolds,
As an association member, I'm concerned about this access of inspectors on the lots at their discretion or whatever we're calling it. The legal issue aside, and I do note, and perhaps the board has received it, but I do note that Mr. Moore did not quote any specific case law to reinforce his opinion. And if you have that, have you presented that to the board of directors?
I did not discern any specific case law in Maryland where the issue has been resolved.
Okay.
I reviewed the law of licensees and base my opinion on that.
Okay, legal issues aside, as an association member, I think this board of directors, who voted here 6 or 5 to 1 today, to essentially say that an inspector can go on any lot at any time he chooses. And it even says whether there is a violation visible or not, or if the violation is not visible, he can go on the lot and look for one. It doesn't say if a violation is being reported, it doesn't say anything.
All right, let's listen to Joe here.
Thank you,
If I'm
Tom.
walking down the street and looking at a lot and I'm an inspector, and I think to myself, I'm gonna go around the back of that property and take a look, see what's going on back there, with no other than it. I'll give you an example of something that happened at my home. I was in, watching television one day in a small room in my house, and my wife called me and said, Joe, Dave Ferguson and 4 guys are out on our front deck, waterfront side. Came in, looked out the window, and there were 4 guys running out there. Including Dave Ferguson. I went out and I said, Dave, what's going on? He said, well, some anonymous person called and said there was a tree blocking someone's view, but they didn't say what lot it was on. And it was on Watertown Road. Well, these guys were parading up and down every property on Watertown Road. No knocking on doors, no nothing. The legalities aside, I think legalities aside, I think that's important. I think people have a certain expectation of privacy on their property. And I think if there is a problem that cannot be seen from a road or from a public area by an inspector, that problem, the inspector will know nothing about it unless someone who can see it, which would typically be an adjoining property owner, could see it from the back of their property and calls in a complaint. In that event, there's no need for the inspector to walk on the potential violator's property and look for it. He can go onto the property owner who is complaining at their request, go on their property and view the violation from there. I don't see the need to give inspectors blanket access to just wander around wherever they want. That's what they do.
Okay, Joe, first of all, I think I, and probably the rest of the board, agree with you 100%.
Yep.
100%.
Yep.
If you read it what it says, in the process of evaluating the existence and extent of a violation, that's when the CPI inspectors are allowed by board policy.
May need.
That's when only then this clearly provides the general manager policy that states that we don't want, we don't want these guys freely roaming around anybody's property. Isn't that what it says? Isn't that the intent of the board? And can't you, do you understand that?
Clear. Let me read further, Bill, if I may. It says, Joe, no,
You're talking to me.
I'm talking to him. He's the president. Entering onto a lot shall take place only.
Well, we took only out.
Only if the existing violation cannot be otherwise determined.
Consider that sentence.
You have to read the first sentence, Joe. It's on page 3, paragraph 6C.
He's got it. But anyway, Joe, I think our intent here is clear.
Very clear.
Very clear that we don't want blanket access. We want them to go on property only to determine if a violation exists, okay? And they just can't arbitrarily walk around.
Absolutely.
Well, I think it does.
I think it does
All
say
right,
that.
I think it does say it. Joe?
And Mr. President, I think the board realizes my opinion is not to urge a policy upon the board. I was asked whether or not, if you decided to do this, was it legal?
Right.
If you decide not to do it, that has nothing to do with my opinion.
Well, we believe, we think we have a reason to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Les, you can just examine that, or you want to say something?
I was just examining.
Doesn't work.
I don't need that.
All right, are there any questions from the press? All right.
How about the public?
And when there's nobody here, Joe is the public. All right, then without objection, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Good meeting.